This is the videotape deposition of Deborah Fauché. This deposition is being held at 1 Galleria Boulevard in Metairie, Louisiana on October 20th, 2021. The time indicated on the video screen is 12:30. Would counsel please introduce themselves for the record?
Patrick McGoey, representing Ramelli Janitorial Services, Inc.
Matthew Sherman on behalf of the City of Kenner.
Would the court reporter please swear in the witness?
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Ms. Fauché, I represent Bob Ramelli, and we're here to take your deposition in connection with the litigation between the City of Kenner and Ramelli. Can you tell us your address for the record?
45 Davis Boulevard, Jefferson, Louisiana, 70121.
Can you briefly tell me your educational background?
I graduated from Newcomb College in 1980, Tulane Law School in 1983.
And did you practice law starting in '83?
I did practice law starting in 1983.
And where did you practice?
I started at Hammett, Leake & Hammett from 1983 to 1986. I was in at Lemley Kelleher from 1986 to 1990. I was at Gordon Arata from 1990 to 1995. I was at Adams & Reese 1995 to 2000. I had my own firm from 2000 to 2010. Then I went in-house as the parish attorney in Jefferson Parish. I was there from December of 2010 to January of 2016. I had about a 3-month break. Then I went to work for the Attorney General in the New Orleans office from about April of 2016 through January of 2017. In January of 2017, I went to work as the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Kenner, in which I have no role as a lawyer.
I get the sense that you've given that recitation before. That was impressive.
First time. Not bad, but I've been practicing. I've taken enough depositions. I know you're going to ask. I thought I'd not scratch my head and look up and try to remember.
So given that background, can you tell us what's the best law firm in town?
Well, I really like the Shahardy Sherman.
There you go. Fair enough.
But, there are others.
So you became the CAO of Kenner in 2017.
That's correct.
And you said you didn't, and you're still in that role today.
That's correct.
And you don't provide any legal advice.
I do
in that
not.
role. What are your responsibilities as the CAO?
The Chief Administrative Officer really is the person who operationally manages the administrative side of the House. The mayor is the chief executive. He makes the decisions. The council is the legislative body. They pass the laws. They also have policy making authority, and I am the person who's sort of charged with implementing that. I also have a number of employees that I supervise, but I clearly do this with a lot of help. We have deputy CAOs who report to me, and then the directors report to them.
And we deposed Ms. Herring this morning, and she mentioned the deputy CAO of the Public Works Department.
Tom Schreiner?
Tom Schreiner.
Yes.
Yeah. So he reports to you?
Yes, he does.
Okay. And she testified that I understand that he was responsible for approving Ramelli's invoices.
I don't remember that.
Okay. Did you have any involvement in approving Ramelli's invoices?
I would only approve an invoice if someone brought it to me because there was a challenge. Certainly, in the end, when there were issues about the CPI and whether it had or had not been paid, that was brought to my attention. But routinely, I would not be involved in reviewing a bill. Also, I think. See, I'm not supposed to look at Bob to try to remember this, but I think I also got involved in the dumpsters. There was a point at which there was some, and again, that was related and unrelated. There was an issue about a dumpster audit that had been done by, or questions about the dumpsters had been brought up by Chad Pitfield, who at that time was not a DCAO, but is now. And so I think, I don't remember who Bob had in his, Mr. Ramelli had in his company working with us to work that out. So
okay.
I was involved at that point. But on a routine basis, no, Mr. McGoey, I would not normally review an invoice.
It's my understanding that Mr. Pitfield is now the DCAO of the Field Services?
That's correct.
And what is that job?
So Field Services is really the street side of Public Works, whereas Public Works and Capital Projects is the project side of Public Works. Public Works, the city's gotten a lot bigger than it was when they originally created that as an all-purpose position. So Tom Schreiner's an engineer, so he performs basically city engineering services. He reviews all the plans for the major construction projects. and Chad does the field operations. So now, IV being the one of the providers, Chad reviews those.
What other vendor invoices does Chad review and approve besides Ivy?
Anything that relates to field services. So that would be maintenance on buildings. Right now, while we're in the recovery from Ida, there's the debris monitor, the debris pickup. We have stabilization mitigation contractor, Southern Cat, who he's reviewing those. Who else do we have? We have a couple of companies that are involved. I think CRC is providing mitigation services in the Rivertown area. He would review those.
Okay. All right. You mentioned that you did get involved when there was an audit with the dumpster invoices from Ramelli.
Yes.
What was the result of the audit?
Yeah, okay, and
Do you recall?
I see. I remember it, but I didn't check before
Fair
I got here. I should have done that. So I recall that that Mr. Ramelli. I think we realized they were picking up some that we were being charged for some they weren't picking up, but then there was those they were picking up we weren't being charged for. So in the end, I think they came up with a. I don't know if we got a little bit back or we paid a little bit more, but the end result was we came to some agreement.
Okay.
But it's also a fluid thing. Like some buildings stop operations, some buildings, we have operations move from one location to another. So I think that was really more of a communication issue with Mr. Ramelli, no intent by anybody to mislead anyone else.
Gotcha. So you think from the Kenner side standpoint, you had sufficient belief that it was resolved, the issue with the dumpsters resolved?
Or it was resolved enough that we no longer felt like we had to withhold payment. Because we had begun to withhold payment pending the results of the request. So, but I don't really remember the final part of that.
I'm going to show you what was previously marked in the deposition as Exhibit 2, which I'll represent to you is Ramelli's contract from 2016.
Okay.
That was used in Mike Segura's deposition. Since you weren't at Kenner in 2016,
That's correct.
I take it you weren't involved in the negotiation of
That's
the
correct.
Ramelli contract. And so you have no firsthand knowledge how any of the provisions got in the contract. Now, it's my understanding that on February 18, 2020, Mr. Ramelli had a meeting with the mayor and you and other officials and Kenner and was told that he was losing the contract.
I remember a meeting.
Object to the form of the question.
I remember the meeting. I don't remember the exact date.
Okay.
I do remember that it was after we started having some issues in January. I don't remember him being told he was losing the contract. I do remember him being told that we were bringing on, in addition, IV waste.
Okay. And I wasn't trying to, I was just paraphrasing, I wasn't trying to put words in your mouth.
It's all good.
So you said you were having issues in January. What issues do you recall in January?
Well, I mean, I'm not supposed to be narrative here.
She's looking at me, I told you now.
I'm a big fan of Bob Ramelli since way back, okay? When we were in the parish, we worked on grass together. Now, he couldn't calculate worth a hoot, so we had to keep, working on the invoices. I particularly enjoy working with his son, Casey. So in December, we have a meeting with Bob and others at the Starbucks, and I remember us talking about how we were going to expand the scope of his contract, and we were going to add money for recycling because recycling could no longer be done at that rate. And Bob and I are sitting across from each other, and we're talking about how if we could just find him a warehouse so he could maybe even have his own plant. And I'm calling CRC and asking if they have a warehouse, and I'm calling other people in the city, and I'm like so excited about this expansion. And we move forward, and in January, one of the things we had talked about was the drop site, and Nikki Nicolosi calls me and says, Bob says he's actually not doing that. So the issues in January where I really felt like we had gotten, we were very thrilled about the expansion of this contract and we were going to move forward and add additional services, and basically we're told in January that actually he has no intention of doing those things. So that's when we started, from the administrative side, started having issues like, wait a minute, we just agreed to expand this contract and now we're actually not going to be doing that. You know,
Okay,
so.
sure. All right.
And then there was the issue with the Christmas trees, and there were a lot of different things like that. But that was the thing for me personally that I felt, because I was so excited about the idea that Bob was going to be expanding his, his recycling services, and we might actually have a location in Kenner, and so anyway.
Okay. So, and you said there was an issue with the Christmas trees. What was the issue with the Christmas
The
trees?
issue, and that was not something I dealt with directly. I just remember being told that the Christmas trees were being thrown into the back of garbage trucks, and the public was objecting.
Okay. Do you recall who told you that?
Well, we had a bunch of people report it. We get a lot of emails, we get a lot of Facebook, we get a lot of next door neighbor phone calls. So to tell you who first told me, but I do know I heard it from the mayor.
Okay.
I heard it probably from Chad Pitfield. I know I talked to
How
Nikki.
You talked to Nikki about it?
Yeah.
What did Nikki say about it?
Initially, Nikki said that's not happening. And then later, and again, I can't tell you dates, I wish I could. Initially said that's not happening, that's ridiculous. And then he said, yeah, that's happening.
And yeah, that's happening. What was happening?
That garbage trucks are being used to pick up the Christmas trees.
And how did you understand the Christmas trees were supposed to be picked up?
Well, I guess it's not so much the pickup as they were then being taken to the landfill. They were not being taken to, I think they were supposed to go to Grand Isle or someplace to be put in the diversionary program, and I don't remember which location, but
So who do you recall telling you that the Christmas trees that Ramelli picked up in January 2020 got dumped in the landfill as opposed to the drop site?
I think it was Nikki, but I don't know for sure.
And you said that Nikki had told you that Bob was not going to
Do the drop site.
do the
It was
drop
too
site.
expensive.
Too expensive. Do you remember where that call was? Was it a call or was it an in-person meeting?
Don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember when in January that was?
Don't remember that either.
Did you ever have a conversation with Mr. Ramelli where he told you he wasn't going to do the
I
drop
did
site?
not.
Okay.
We really, we communicated with, except when we were having coffee or lunch or something, we communicated through Nikki.
Okay. And you understood Nikki worked for Ramelli?
My understanding was that Nikki was the representative of Ramelli in some capacity, because when there was a problem, missed pickup or any problem we had, if we were to call Nikki. This was a pre-existing arrangement. This is not something we created. And then, when I say Nikki, I should be saying Mr. Nicolosi would arrange to have it resolved. So that was part of the value of that relationship, is that we didn't, like, if we called and we had a complaint, it would largely get resolved, but there were just so many complaints.
Okay. And so you understood when you called Nikki that he was representing Ramelli?
That's what we presumed.
Well, I mean, if you had a problem with something that the Ramelli company was doing, you called Nikki?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Ramelli never told you he wasn't going to do the drop site, but Nikki told you that?
That's correct.
Can you remember any more specifics of Nikki telling you that Bob wasn't going to do the drop site?
I don't remember any more specifics about the drop site itself, other than it was just, he's not doing it, it's too expensive.
Okay.
Which, that was sort of key. That was something we had talked about at that December meeting.
Okay. And the December meeting, you said that was at a Starbucks?
Yes, it was the Starbucks in Kenner on Williams Boulevard.
And the city council members were there?
I don't remember who was there. I think did we have maybe more than one meeting with him there? I don't remember. I remember there were meetings with city council members because we needed to bring them up to speed on why we were coming to ask for more money.
Did Nikki Nicolosi attend those meetings with council members where you all were talking about getting more money to Ramelli under the contract?
I don't remember. I do remember being at a meeting with Nikki and Bob, and I do remember being at meetings with council members. I cannot remember if that's the same meeting I'm remembering or there were multiple meetings.
Fair enough. And the result of the December meetings, coffee meetings about expanding the scope of his contract, did that ultimately get put into an amendment to Mr. Ramelli's contract?
I remember seeing an amendment drafted and voted on by the council.
So was that the agreement that you all had come to in December at these coffee meetings?
I'm assuming so.
Okay.
Again, that's the legal department, and
All right. And that what didn't fall under you?
what didn't
The legal-
fall.
the legal.
The legal department did not fall under me.
I'm going to show you what was used in a prior deposition.
32, huh? No, I think it's,
There we go. It's out of order. Exhibit 32, which is a February 21st, 2020 ordinance that has attached to it an amendment to Ramelli's contract.
Okay.
So is that, take a look at the contract if you would, the amendment.
Again, I would
Is
not-
that what you all agreed
I-
to? Or was there something that was agreed to that wasn't provided for in their written contract?
I really don't know. I mean, I was not involved in drafting of the amendment.
Well, do you recall, as you sit here today, that Mr. Ramelli said he was going to do something over and above what was in the amendment to his
He
contract?
was going to honor the provisions in his contract that existed, that required that he put in a drop site. Is the one thing that, that was most urgent to me.
Okay.
So this looks like this just pertains to recycling, maybe? Again, I'd have to defer to the legal department on this.
And who handled the drafting of the amendment?
December of, what year was this?
It was
February of 2020 was probably Ed Rapier. I think Ed was the city attorney in February of 2020. It would either have been Ed Rapier or Lee Roussel, and the attorney in the office who drafted most of the contracts was Eric Mund.
Okay. And so going back to this meeting that you were there with Mr. Ramelli and the mayor, what do you recall from that meeting?
Oh, the meeting in the office you're
The
talking about?
meeting in the office.
wait, let me just make sure I'm on this.
Right, not the
December,
Starbucks
Not
meeting.
December, not, yeah, I'm
Okay,
talking.
right. You asked me about this meeting to start off with, and took you straight back to Starbucks.
right.
I see that. Okay.
Yeah, so
Timeline.
I'm now focused on the
We're
February
back where you
meeting.
started,
I know
okay.
you said you weren't sure of the date. I think.
I'm not sure of
I
the date,
think-
but I do know that that legal department was there, that the mayor was there, that I was there. I don't remember who else would have been there. Maybe Lee
And-
Roussel was there too.
And let me just, for the record, if it's a meeting with just you all and your attorneys, that's
And
privileged.
Mr. O'Malley,
Okay,
I think is
all
what
right,
we're
I just want to
talking
make sure
about.
somebody, a third
Yeah.
party there.
I'm talking
All
about the meeting with Mr. Ramelli.
Yeah, I think that's. So there was a meeting which Mr. O'Malley was invited in, and either the mayor or the attorney told Bob that we would be adding a provider under the contract.
So you recall at that meeting, Bob was told by either the mayor or legal that they would be adding a contractor?
Correct.
Okay. Was anything said that that they were going to be taking away Bob's work under the
I
contract?
don't remember. I know the contract was not being terminated, but I don't know. I just don't remember what the specifics were.
Was that told to Mr. Ramelli then, that the contract wasn't being terminated?
Yes,
Did you tell him that, or did
No.
it? Who would have told Bob at that meeting?
that would have been the legal department.
All right. Had you made a legal conclusion that the contract hadn't been terminated?
Have I been
Check the
asked to
form of
make a
the
legal
question.
conclusion?
Look, well,
Look at him. Okay. No, I had not made any legal conclusion about anything, Mr. McGowan.
I figured that was the case.
I saw you head in that direction. No, I didn't draw any legal conclusions on that. We deferred to the legal department.
That wasn't your bailiwick.
Well, the operational side of it was, but the legal side of it was not.
Okay. All right, so tell me operationally, what involvement did you have in Ivy Waste coming on to become the contractor?
Operationally, I was aware of the discussions. I was involved in some meetings, but I'm aware that there were other meetings I was not involved in with Mr. Torres and his attorney, John Litchfield. I had a tour of the IV facility. I also had a tour of the, what is the name of that company? Waste Pro. We went on a tour of the Waste Pro facility. I think that's the right name. The one that Barry Bordelon was working for at the time. I had conversations. I mean, once we got to the point of seeking council approval, I got involved in issues about whether we're going to pay to replace cans once they're stolen, and like small level decisions like that.
Do you recall anything else about that meeting with Mr. Romelli that we were talking about with the mayor, where he was told that the contract wasn't being terminated, but you all would be adding another contractor?
Not really.
Do you recall whether or not the mayor said that Mr. Romelli had embarrassed him?
I don't remember.
Now,
That
look
may
at,
have- the Christmas trees? Was he talking about? I mean, I don't remember. I shouldn't. I'm trying to.
yeah, I'm just trying to ask you, would you remember? I recall from watching one of the city council meetings, Mr. Romelli said, Mayor, you said I embarrassed you.
Must have been
How
about
did I
Christmas
embarrass you?
trees or something. Okay.
So that's just what I was asking.
Right. I don't remember.
Do you know whether or not this contract, the amendment to the contract, which is attached to Exhibit 32, was ever executed by the city?
I do not know if it was signed. However, the opinion rendered by the legal department previously, and I'm sharing with you the opinion rendered by the legal department, okay, is
Okay.
that once the council approves it, because they're responsible for this, that is an enforceable contract. So the mayor's execution at that point is documentary or something for some purpose. I mean, I don't know the right word. I don't want to say ceremonial, but once the council approves it, you can act on the contract.
Okay, so,
So have I been able to locate a signed copy? I have not.
all right, so, but you're sharing with me that the City of Kenner's legal department have given you an opinion that that amendment is enforceable even though it wasn't signed by
Correct.
the mayor?
Object to the form of the
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Did that legal opinion also say that that amendment is enforceable against Mr. Romelli without him signing it?
I think it's signed by Mr. Romelli. It's not signed by Mr. Okay, I need to defer to the legal department. My understanding was it was signed by Mr. Romelli. Maybe it wasn't.
Gotcha. That doesn't have a signature page to it, so I don't know.
So that's more of a, I guess I need to defer to the legal department,
Okay.
because that was not the opinion that I'm referring to.
So is it your understanding that the city's position is that it's bound by the terms of that amendment to Mr.
Check the
Romelli's
form.
contract?
I'm not here as a representative of the city, so I'm simply sharing with you that we were advised that once the council signed it, that was sufficient for the city. But if Mr. Romelli didn't sign it, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, one of the things that's provided in that amendment is that effective January 1, 2020, this was retroactive. Romelli was going to be paid, what, $1.90
Okay.
per service unit for
Okay.
recycling.
All right.
And it's my understanding the city has not paid Mr. Romelli $1.90 per service unit for recycling
From January
from
down.
January.
Okay, that would be a finance question.
So you're not aware of that?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Did the legal opinion that that you received from Kenner's legal department on the enforceability of Amendment 1 before it was approved by the council via ordinance at that council meeting, did they give you the opinion that the contract?
What you want me to do? I got myself into this.
No, I mean, look, anything that, you're saying legal opinion, if you're talking about legal communications, then it's privileged.
I'm talking about a
Yeah.
public communication by the legal department.
A public communication.
Public communication by the legal department, but it was not about this amendment. It was about, generally speaking,
Fair
from
enough.
one party, which would be Mr. Romelli in this case, signs it, and the council adopts it. It's enforceable even if the mayor has not yet signed it. If Mr. Romelli never signed this, then I'm not sure that legal opinion, the general legal opinion rendered would apply. I
Fair
don't
enough.
know. So that's
Okay.
really for the legal department.
So that general legal opinion that the city of Kenner gave you, my question is before this ordinance was passed on February 21st, 2020, did they give you a legal opinion as to whether or not this amendment was enforceable before there would be action by the council?
Don't remember having a conversation, private or public, about when this would be enforceable.
Okay.
Just for the record, Pat, when you say legal opinion, you're talking about a public opinion that's issued?
Talking about a public, well, I think it was a written opinion that was issued, but it was certainly stated at a council meeting by Ed Rapier, referencing research that had been done by Eric Mund.
Before there was this February meeting with Mr. Romelli and the mayor and you, where he was informed that you all were adding another contractor. Before that meeting, what discussions did you have with anyone in Kenner concerning whether or not Kenner was terminating Mr. Romelli's contract?
Object to the form of the question to the extent it calls for attorney-client communications. I'm instructing you not to answer this. And I'm going to object because it misstates fact, because the contract's never been terminated.
Okay,
Subject to those objections.
and so let me figure out how I unravel that. So there was never a communication about terminating his contract. Operational communications with third parties, discussion, when it first came to my attention that the request was being made to consider IV, I assumed it was a sub. Like Mr. Romelli is a sub to the Jefferson Parish provider. I was assuming they were asking him to add a sub. So the initial communications never were about terminating, because I don't think there was ever any intention to terminate. There were attorney-client privilege communications with the legal department about what are the many options to be taken, but I don't, termination is a very severe action to take. That's totally different from, or at least totally different what was intended. So no, there were, that other than attorney-client privilege communications, which it's assuming I had an attorney-client privilege communication on this topic, Counselor, which I'm not sure that actually happened.
So
I don't want to take privilege and have the assumption be I had that conversation, because I don't think I had that with anybody.
fair enough. So when you had this meeting in February
Yeah.
with the mayor and Mr. Romelli, when somebody told Mr. Romelli at that meeting that
Yeah.
the contract wasn't being terminated, that's the first time you heard even that issue come
No.
up? So it was discussed before
That it was not being terminated,
that he was not being
which
terminated?
is different from discussing whether he'd be terminated. I guess I'm not answering your question the way you're posing it, but
Well,
there was no discussion. The discussion was always of not terminating his contract.
correct. So there was discussions about it before the meeting with Mr. Romelli internally in Kenner?
About
Discussions
not
about what?
About
terminating
not
his contract.
terminating contract?
Correct.
Okay. So, and you said termination was a significant event?
Well, I think termination is a significant event. I'm giving you my opinion.
Explain to me how termination of this contract is any different than what the city of Kenner did starting on May 1, 2020.
Object.
If I call
That
Mr.
clearly calls for a legal opinion and a legal conclusion by
Oh,
the
come
witness.
on.
Go ahead, just,
If I call Mr. Romelli tomorrow, he needs to come help me.
okay. So that's the city of Kenner's position?
That's
No,
my
wait.
position.
Object to the form. That's not. First off, I've objected. Second off, she is here as a fact witness, just like we've been talking about. It's not the city's opinion. And Ms. Fauché,
It's not- okay, I'm
you're
sorry.
here today as a fact
sorry.
witness. You don't need to give your opinions
Okay,
on
nope.
legal
Nope.
interpretations of a
Nope,
contract. That's what the
nope.
judge is going to do,
Well,
hopefully sooner rather than later.
As the CAO of Kenner, in charge of operations for the solid waste contracts, that's your responsibility, correct?
I'm responsible for supervising the departments who handle those sorts of things.
Okay.
I don't have direct supervision over solid waste management.
So given your position is that Mr. Romelli's contract is presently in effect,
The legal department
objection.
has rendered the opinion that that contract is still in effect.
so what is your understanding as to what Mr. Romelli is responsible to provide the city of Kenner under that contract?
Same objection.
Right now, he's providing dumpster service at the police department, and we have the ability to reach out to him, providing the other services under the contract.
Okay.
But I don't, again, that's really more of a question for Mr. Pitfield,
The judge.
Okay.
or the judge even. Is that a legal question? I'm sorry.
I'll ask Mr. Pitfield on that question. Now, what analysis, if any, have you done to satisfy yourself that the services Mr. Romelli's, the dumpster services Mr. Romelli's providing the police department are services that he's providing under that contract?
I have not
Check the
done
form of the question.
any analysis.
So that's just your opinion.
I've been advised that by the legal department.
That would be Ed Rapier?
I don't remember if it was Ed Rapier or Lee Roussel.
Okay.
Could have been either or both.
So it's my understanding that Romelli Waste LLC is the entity that's providing the dumpster services to the police department. Were you aware of that?
I wouldn't know.
I'll show you, which is an affidavit of Ms. Herring in this case. She attaches to her affidavit some of those invoices. for instance, that invoice in front of you.
Okay.
So you've been given the opinion from the Kenner Legal Department that Ramelli Waste LLC is being provided under the Ramelli janitorial contract?
I've been rendered the legal opinion that part of the service is being provided to us by the Ramelli, whatever he wants to call himself, since it's all one tax ID number, are pursuant to the contract.
Other than the dumpster services that Mr. Ramelli is providing the police department, is the city of Kenner, from an operational standpoint, have they asked him to provide any services since May 1, 2020?
Not that I'm aware of.
Now, in addition to not asking him to provide services since May 2020, didn't the city of Kenner instruct him to remove all of his cans from the city?
Yes.
Okay. So you'd agree with me that's ordering him to do something?
Object to the form of the question.
It's requesting that he do something.
Well, when he didn't, he got charged with 22,000 litter citations,
When
right?
he didn't, we picked him up ourselves, me included. I really didn't want to do that, but it's all right. It's great for my resume.
What about the dumpsters that he had in the city? He was ordered to remove those as well, wasn't he?
I don't know about that. I guess he must be if he's only doing one dumpster now, but I don't remember.
So in addition to telling him to stop work, the city started, effective May 1, ordered him to do certain things to remove his property from the city.
I
Object
don't,
to the form.
Would you agree with
I
that?
don't
It's
really know.
characterized as a fact.
I
Well,
don't.
from an operational standpoint, the dumpsters that the city is now have at the city facilities, are those IV waste dumpsters or the Ramelli dumpsters?
I'm going to have to tell you I assume they are IV waste because I've not seen them. I know the one at the Kenner Police is still Ramelli.
So, given your statement that you think at any time you can tell Mr. Ramelli to provide services under the contract, how would Mr. Ramelli go about providing residential garbage services under his contract to the citizens of Kenner?
Object
have
to
to
the
give
form
him
of
a-
the question.
We'd have to give him a ramp-up period the same way we did IV. I mean, he could be asked to be, come in and do a portion of the city or a number of households. Again, that's speculating at this point, but I think if that were the decision to be made by those who make such decisions, then I think that's what would happen.
Was there any discussion about IV waste only taking a portion of the city's contract?
I really don't know because I assumed when they came in that they were going to come in as a sub to Ramelli. I didn't know, in the initial discussions, I was not involved in. So
Okay. So how did you find out or come to the impression that IV waste was going to come in as Ramelli's sub?
I was told by the mayor that he'd had a meeting with Greg Buson and I think it was a meeting with Greg Buson and Nikki Nicolosi, in which Greg Buson looked at Nikki and said, "Is there any way IV can get involved in that Ramelli business?" That was repeated to me by the mayor. So that's the first I heard that IV was looking to do work, I assumed, with Ramelli.
So no one ever told you that IV was interested in being a sub to Ramelli?
When somebody asks Ramelli's representative, can I get somebody to get part of that work, which is what is being repeated to me, that sounds to me like a sub, but I don't.
Gotcha. So you're talking about Ramelli's representative, Nikki Nicolosi?
Yes.
Okay. So when did you come to find out that IV Waste was actually looking to take over all of the garbage services in Kenner?
There were
Object to the form of the question.
there were discussions between mayor and IV, and again, they're not taking over all the garbage services, as you recall, but because there's still dumpster services, and we may call upon Mr. Ramelli any time to assist us. But for purposes of picking up residential waste, as it has turned out, it must have been at some point in early February or late January.
Okay.
Again, I don't have the timeline. I know it was in early January when we were told by Mr. Nicolosi or maybe it was late January. Sometime between early January and middle February when we met with, and I'm taking your word for the fact that that was middle February when we met with Mr. Ramelli.
It was February 18th, but you can
I'll trust you.
confirm it.
I'll trust you.
So the early January 2020 conversation you had with Nikki where he said Mr. Ramelli wasn't going to be doing the drop site, was anyone else part of that conversation other than you and Mr. Nicolosi?
See, I can't remember if that was by telephone or if that was in person, but I believe the mayor was talking with us as well.
Okay. Do you recall anyone else?
No, I don't.
Who handled the negotiations for the city of Kenner with Ivy Waste?
Legal department.
And specifically, who in the legal department?
Don't know because I wasn't involved, but I would assume it would have been Ed Rapier, Lee Roussel, and or Eric Mund.
Okay. What, if any, was your role in negotiating the contract with Ivy?
I don't think I negotiated, but I would be asked questions. I had seen drafts, so it wasn't like I was completely out of the loop, but it would largely be the legal department's actually negotiating. I talked to John Litchfield a couple times. Yeah.
Okay. Was Nikki Nicolosi involved in the negotiations of the contract?
I don't remember that being the case. I do remember, early on, I'm assuming that Nikki is, again, based upon what was told to me about the meeting with Buson, I'm assuming that Nikki is working to develop a sub. Later on, at some point, Nikki told us that he had been fired or he was no longer with Ramelli. I do not remember when that occurred. At some point, and I don't know if it was before the meeting with Bob or after, we got a letter from Bob that said that Nikki no longer worked for him or was no longer affiliated with him. Again, when I say work, I don't know the nature of that relationship. He was his representative in some capacity.
Who invited Nikki to be involved in the discussions with Ivy Waste?
Don't know. I mean, obviously Greg Buson, I guess, with that very first meeting.
And who was Greg Buson?
Greg Buson is a political advisor.
Does he work for the city of Kenner?
No.
Does Nikki Nicolosi work for the city of Kenner?
Nikki has had contracts with us on various projects. I think the last project was probably the wastewater takeover from Veolia. He was one of the consultants that helped us in the transition from Veolia to in-house.
So presently, he provides services to the city of Kenner on the Veolia contract?
Not presently, because that was 2 years ago. He's just a trusted advisor. I call him a lot on a lot of things because he used to have my job. So I'll call and say, when you had my job, what would you do with this?
So Nikki Nicolosi was paid by the city of Kenner to be a consultant when the city of Kenner took over the Veolia wastewater plant?
Nikki was a consultant, but I don't know if he was what company he was working with, because we had both Digital Engineering and Solution on that project. So he may have been working with Digital or Solution. I just remember seeing him at the meetings.
Okay. So who is Digital Engineering?
Digital Engineering is an engineering company in the city of Kenner.
And is Nikki Nicolosi a consultant for Digital Engineering?
Don't know, generally speaking, but I think in that project he was either with Digital or Solution.
Okay. What projects does Digital provide engineering services to the city of Kenner?
Digital's on a number of city projects. I can't really give you a list right now.
And have you ever seen Nikki Nicolosi working or providing services on any of the Digital Engineering projects?
Actually providing services, I don't remember any except for Veolia. Though, no, you know what? That's wrong, because he may have had something to do with the fire department. He may have been involved in the fire department. I think Digital has the design on the new fire department, and I think Nikki was getting involved with helping us, expedite the process, making sure that we were giving everything we needed to Digital to get that moving.
Okay, so for the fire department job, was Nikki paid by Digital Engineering or was he paid by the city of Kenner?
He was not paid by the city of Kenner.
Has the city of Kenner directly paid Nikki Nicolosi for any of his work?
I don't think so, but that would be a finance question. I don't think so.
And in addition to Mr. Nicolosi providing consulting services to Digital Engineering for work in the city of Kenner, it's your understanding that Nikki Nicolosi also provides consulting services to Solutions?
He may or may not. He was at the table for the Veolia transition, and our transition team included both Veolia and Solution, so I'm not 100% sure if he was with Solution or if he was with Digital.
Okay. What is Solutions?
Solution is largely an auditing company. They come in and do sort of detailed audits of entities. They bring in experts in whatever field it is, And then sometimes they provide transitional staff. So pretty much anytime we have a department transition, BLE is not the only one. Anytime we have a department transition, we bring them in to go over the department, come up with conclusions about operations of the department, and then make recommendations about going forward.
Okay. So it's your understanding when Solutions was brought in by the City of Kenner to audit the Veolia wastewater plant when the City of Kenner took it over?
I'm sorry. Is that a question? I'm sorry. I thought that was
I'm
a
just trying-
preparatory
so
phrase.
What was Solutions doing for that wastewater
Solution was
job?
brought in because we needed somebody to drill deep into the prior operations because the way, and forgive me if I bore you with this, but Veolia's operations, the transaction we had with them was we paid for repairs, but we didn't pay for maintenance. It was their obligation to pay for maintenance. They got a flat amount for that. Our concern was that what they would do is not do the maintenance until it turned into a repair and have us pay for it. So we needed somebody in to go in and dig deep to audit that, to figure out, historically which things had been maintained or repaired at what point, and which things at the end, the conclusion of the transition, we should say, okay, Veolia, you owe us this amount of money because you should have maintained this here instead of asking us to repair it here. So that was they were part of the team, but we also had digital in there who was going in and looking at the actual system functions. Who else was on that team? There were more people on that team. We had Dan Wagner, who is do not remember the name of his company, but BLD.
Okay.
And he was involved with his whole operation is wastewater management. So he's someone we would normally call out as a consultant when it was beyond our capacity. So those groups together went with us, with Veolia, through the whole process and helped us come up with a sort of a divorce agreement with Veolia, and then helped us set up for moving forward.
Gotcha. And is there
So
litigation over that?
Yes, there's litigation over past amounts alleged by Veolia.
And it's your understanding that for the work that Solutions did in auditing the wastewater plant, that Nikki Nicolosi was a consultant to them on that job?
Nikki was at the table with us. I do not know if he was with Solution or if he was with Digital.
Now, what, if any, experiences does Mr. Nicolosi have with auditing wastewater facilities?
He was the chief administrative officer the last time that facility was run by the City of Kenner, so he was the person in my position when we were operating it. So he had the history of being able to supervise one of those and be able to tell us, okay, when we were here before we did this. I believe when he was the CAO, he's the one that hired the woman who is now the director, Joanne Massoni. I believe when it was a city entity, Nikki hired Joanne, then it went to Veolia or Veolia's predecessor, and now she's been there for like 30 years, and now we take it back inside, now she's the director. So anyway, that's his history. He kind of he kind of set the whole system up before it got transferred out.
All right. And what, if any, services are you aware of Mr. Nicolosi providing to Digital Engineering?
Don't really know, although again on the fire station, I know he's been involved in trying to get us to expedite information to give to Digital so they can complete their plans.
Okay. Now, before you all met with Mr. Ramelli, the administration was meeting with IV Waste, isn't that correct?
Before meeting with Mr. Ramelli, there had been meetings with IV Waste.
When are you talking about February? Patrick? A February meeting?
Yeah, before the February meeting.
And you're asking specifically if Deborah was at the meetings, correct?
No, I didn't ask.
He's in administration. I know the legal department was meeting, but I don't remember what meetings. Again, timeline-wise, I can't help you.
Fair enough. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 46, which is a January 17, 2020 email from Julie Tafaro to Ed Rapier. I asked you to take a look at this email.
Which one? 40 what?
This is 46.
Okay.
And so it's a Friday, January 17. Email says, Ed, it was great meeting you and your team today.
Okay.
Attached is a near to final agreement with St. Bernard.
Okay.
And this is IV Waste contract
Okay.
with St. Bernard. Do you recall whether you were at the meeting on January 17th with Ms. Tafaro?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall any discussions about how this meeting came about?
I do not.
Do you know whether or not Nikki Nicolosi was at this January 17 meeting?
I do not.
Do you know who would have been on the Kenner team that met with Julie Tavaro?
I don't.
A note in,
And there was a day that we went and did a tour of the facility. That could have been that day. I don't know. Because when she says your team, I mean, I don't know what Ed's team would be, but
tell me about what tour the facility. Who went on a tour of the facility?
I think Ed was there. I think the mayor was there. Well, no, the mayor was there. Ed was there. And I don't remember who else was there, but there were several people.
Was this the meeting that, at the council meeting, the public, the people from the various groups said they had toured the facility?
No, that was the second time we had been at the facility. We'd been to the facility one time prior to that.
Gotcha. So you toured the facility with Ed, the mayor, and maybe
Some
somebody
other
else?
people, right, before they took the public members.
Gotcha.
And I don't remember when I toured the other facility, the Waste Pro facility.
All right. So it's possible that this meeting she's referring to, meeting the Kenner team, was a meeting at the facility that...
It's possible.
possible.
Again, I just don't know.
Okay.
Timeline-wise, I don't remember. I do remember a meeting like that where we went to tour the facility, but I don't remember the date or if this was that meeting.
Okay. And besides touring the facility, what else did you all do? Did you sit in a conference room and talk?
We did. I mean, we looked at they have a control room that's, they're watching all the trucks and they can talk to the guys in the truck and they have videos of, every route. So if somebody calls in and says, my can didn't get picked up, they can roll it back and say, your can was not there when we passed, kind of thing. Or you hit my mailbox and they got a video, the mailbox is fine. And anyway, that kind of thing. So we got to see a little bit of their, that part of their operations, and we went and saw where the trucks were. There's some truck wash, more of the mechanical stuff that I didn't really, know that much about. But, and then we sat and we talked. Yeah.
And what do you recall talking about? Ivy taking over the contract?
No, about Ivy wanting to work with the city of Kenner. But I mean, I don't remember talking specifically about the contract or what role or, again, I don't remember,
Okay.
The specifics of that.
Do you recall Julie Tavaro saying she was going to send Kenner a copy of her draft contract with St. Bernard?
I don't remember that. I would not be surprised, but that would be really the legal department. There's a whole giant box over there that says Foshi on it.
Yeah. That's why I told him we had to start early.
That's very scary.
It is.
And he's only like a...
He's reaching for it, so
not
he's
even-
getting to it. He likes to keep, a lot of it's just like notes from his kids.
Got it.
No, it's, here, I'll get rid of that, make you feel better.
I feel so much better.
There you
now.
go.
Off the record, apparently, during a deposition with Martha. Oh, sorry, no, I forgot that you were there. Never mind. We'll stay on the record. I'll tell y'all later.
All right, I'm going to show you now.
Am I supposed to be keeping him in some order for
No,
everybody? Okay.
we'll reorganize them.
Okay.
But for the record, Ms. Heron was very good at keeping them organized.
Yeah, I'm
what you-
not.
that's what
I'm
you
so
wanted.
not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that financial officer. I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 47, which is a June 23, 2020 email. Invitation from Mr. Rapier to you, Lee Roussel, and Nikki Nicolosi.
Okay. This is June?
This is January 23.
January,
So
okay.
in relation, this is 6 days after the
Got it.
email we just saw where Ms. Tafaro
Okay,
sent her
got it.
contract, meeting with the team.
Got it.
And this is Ed inviting Deborah, Lee, and Nikki
Okay.
to a meeting in the mayor's conference room
Okay.
regarding IV waste on Monday, January 27th. Did you attend a meeting in the mayor's conference room with Nikki?
Don't remember, but I could have.
All right, so you're not ruling it out?
Not ruling it out.
Do you know why? Do you recall meeting with Mr. Nicolosi and Ed Rapier about IV waste as opposed to Ramelli?
No.
It's strange to me that Mr.
I just
Ramelli,
don't remember.
Mr. Nicolosi had worked for Mr. Ramelli for years, and now he's being invited to a meeting with counsel for Kenner and you to discuss IV waste, his competitor.
I don't
Object to the
know, and
form of
look,
the question.
okay, sorry. I'm sorry, I need to listen to you.
Object to the form of the question.
Okay, so I don't know within the timeline when this is vis-à-vis getting the letter that says Nikki doesn't work with Ramelli anymore. I
Okay,
don't know
so
where
you'd
this
get
is.
that, you'd get that letter.
Hold on a second. Let me like,
Go
can I tell you
ahead.
both parts?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know where that is vis-à-vis that, but also I don't know where that is vis-à-vis the Busan conversation where I'm thinking that he might be a sub. So could it conceivably have been, would I have been surprised if we were having a conversation about IV waste wants to be a sub to Ramelli? No, I would not have. But again, I don't know when this time was.
And you don't recall the meeting?
I don't.
So you
Doesn't
don't-
mean there wasn't one. I just don't recall.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Just so you're clear, I'm going to show you what was previously marked as this Nicolosi number 11.
February 6th. Okay.
And you were emailed on February 6th, a letter that Mr. Ramelli wrote on February 5th.
Got it.
Saying, Mr. Nicolosi no longer works
All right.
for me.
Now, I don't know how long before this, but we were told before, when we received this, we'd already been told by Mr. Nicolosi that he was not affiliated with Mr. Ramelli anymore, but I don't know when.
All right, so before February 6th, you learned from Mr. Nicolosi that he wasn't working for Mr.
Correct.
Ramelli. Okay. Did he tell you he was working for IV Waste?
No.
Did you have an understanding of who Nicky Nicolosi was working for when he was meeting with you and others at Kenner?
After February 6th, after he told me he
After
wasn't working.
Correct.
You know, that's hard to say because, like I said, trusted advisor. He's somebody, if Nikki, he's retired, so he's somebody I would ask about this anyway. I can't tell you for sure. It's not unusual for Nikki to be around to help us.
You say he's retired. He's worked for Ramelli for the last 10 years. Were you aware of that?
I don't know what the relationship was. I know he was a representative for Mr. Ramelli because that's who we would call. But I guess what I'm saying is he's somebody that I would not be surprised. We ask him for help on all sorts of things, like when the mayor did his transition. You know, Nikki was involved in interviewing people during the transition team, but he didn't get paid for that. So, what was he doing and who was he working for? I really can't say.
Okay.
I can just say it was not a surprise that Nikki was there.
Who could tell me from the city of Kenner what Nicky's involvement was or who he was working for during this time period?
I think the only person who could tell you that probably was Nikki.
I asked him and he took the Fifth Amendment.
Okay, well,
He asserted his right against self-incrimination. So that's why I'm asking other
I don't
people.
know.
Okay. Were you not aware that he's asserted his
Yeah,
Amendment,
I guess I had heard that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
not on that particular question, but
so in this time period of January and February 2020,
right.
you recall meeting with Nick Nicolosi to talk about IV waste, but you don't recall who he was working for.
I recall meeting with Nikki to talk about garbage generally. Early in January, it was about issues we were having with Ramelli, and then by February, it is adding IV. But at this middle part, I really can't tell you. I don't know who he was representing.
When you toured the IV waste facility, you did it once or twice?
Twice.
Did Nicky Nicolosi go on any of those visits?
I think so, but I don't know for sure.
Do you think he was on the first visit with just Kenner officials, or do you think he was on the second visit with
I just don't remember.
Kenner residents?
I don't remember. It's not like it's unusual for Nikki to be somewhere, so it's not like he would stick out, but I just don't remember.
Now, the IV Waste draft contract with St. Bernard that Julie Tafaro sent Ed Rapier. Had you ever seen this before?
I don't know.
Okay. You should still have a copy. It was Exhibit 46.
That one.
And a note on page 7 of that contract, IV Waste rates for picking up residential units in St. Bernard is $12.86 per month per service unit.
Okay.
Do you see that under 2.0 scope of work? Did you take part in any discussions with IV Waste negotiating the rates that they were offering to do the residential units in Kenner?
The discussion I had about that was with the mayor that we could not pay him any more than what was in the contract with Ramelli, that there would be no way we could have a different rate than what was in the contract.
Why couldn't you pay a different rate than what was in
Because-
Ramelli's contract?
Didn't want to, I guess is the right answer to that. Not willing to.
Okay. So there was no city ordinance or any rule, regulation that prohibited it?
No, but that doesn't, it wouldn't make any sense
Okay.
to pay more than what was in the contract.
So who made that decision that the city of Kenner wasn't going to pay more than the contract? Was that the mayor, or was that you, or was that the city council?
Ultimately, it had to be the council, but the contract was put forward by the legal department, and the mayor was the one who said, we will not put, we're not going to put forth a contract with anything more than what is in the contract with Ramelli.
Okay. Were you ever in any meetings with Mr. Litchfield or anyone else from IV Waste where that was conveyed to IV Waste, that the city of Kenner is not going to pay you more than what's in Ramelli's contract?
I think so.
Where did those meetings take place?
I guess I don't know. I met with John Litchfield. We met at the Emergency Operations Center. They call it the auditorium. I remember having one meeting there.
And who was at that meeting?
John Litchfield, me, Ed Rapier. I don't remember if the mayor was there or not.
And were you all?
Maybe Mike Wetzel.
And what do you recall being discussed at the meeting?
I just remember the rate being discussed at the meeting.
And do you remember at that point what rate you all were talking about?
Nope.
Okay.
Just remember that we wanted it to be the same rate that was reflected in the contract with Ramelli.
And did Mr. Litchfield say that Mr. Torres would do it for the same rate?
I assume so, because that is what the contract said, but I don't really remember having that specific discussion, because again, that would have been documents bounced back and forth between the legal department and Mr. Litchfield.
Now, from an operational standpoint, did you have any discussions with IV Waste before May 1, 2020 about when they would have their cans?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about those discussions.
Well, the discussion was that they would have their cans ready so that we would not have the situation that ended up happening. But because of COVID, like everyone else, the company that manufactured the cans had a staffing shortage, so they were behind. So had we not had COVID intervene, then the cans would have been here in time to put cans out, have both cans on the street, and have an orderly pickup. As we all know, that's not what happened.
Okay. When did you become aware that IV Waste wasn't going to have all of their cans ready for May 1st, 2020?
I don't recall. It was very late in the process.
Okay. So from an operational standpoint, what did you do to address the fact that IV Waste wasn't going to have all their cans ready for May 1st, 2020?
Operationally, what did I do? We attempted to pick up the cans ourselves, and there was a, and I'm going to say the wrong thing, but there was a stop work or a TRO or something against IV from picking up the cans. So then, seems like we hired a garbage truck and we had our own employees out there picking up cans.
Okay. So prior to the TRO, IV Waste was picking up and accessing Romelli's cans and disposing of the garbage?
I think the very first time they tried to do that, like there may have been a day of that, and they got stopped.
Okay.
So
So
I don't
was-
think that lasted long, but that was the plan. Not realizing that was going to be a problem. The plan was just going to be, dump the Romelli cans, give him his cans back, because the plan was to have the IV cans out a month before May 1st. So they came in pretty close to May 1st. They were supposed to be out, I think, April 1st. So again, that's a Chad Pitfield question about when they actually came in, but we got in a jam with this transition as a result of that can problem.
Gotcha. So IV Waste couldn't deliver the cans by May 1, 2020 as they proposed, and the plan to address that was to allow IV Waste to empty Romelli's cans until they could get the cans out?
Well, I mean, you say that like it was a plan.
Well,
It wasn't a plan. The plan was for the cans to be there April 1st. And as they kept rolling, as we kept getting closer to May 1st, we kept being told they'll be here any minute now, they're going to be here any minute now. I can't tell you when they actually got here. I'm pretty sure some were actually here May 1st. They were just not all rolled out. Again, May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd. Chad Pitfield question. So there was not any anticipation that we were not going to be able to accomplish what we had set out to do. We just weren't as early as we were supposed to be. We did not expect to be that late.
Do you recall the mayor telling the public that until June 1st they were to use Romelli's cans until they got an IV Waste can?
Until June 1st?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Well, if in fact that's what he did, was that the plan?
I don't remember that being the plan. I mean, the plan was to get the IV cans out, but we didn't realize that we were not going to be able to dump the Romelli cans.
Now,
Hadn't had that, again, that had not been a discussion prior to the time it happened.
was Nikki Nicolosi involved at all in us getting the IV Waste cans?
I don't know.
You didn't see him?
Not involved with us.
Okay. What do you mean with us?
Well, we didn't hire him to do anything with the cans, but because Nikki is somebody that we call upon for advice, it's possible that we could have said, do you know any other place we can get cans or something, but
Do you know whether or not Nikki Nicolosi was actually dealing directly with the manufacturer of the
No.
cans to get the IV Waste
no.
cans delivered?
I don't know anything about that.
So it's accurate to say that Kenner wasn't asking its trusted advisor, Nick Nicolosi.
To call the manufacturer of the cans? No, I don't think so.
From an operational standpoint, you didn't ask Nikki Nicolosi to get involved
No.
in getting IV Waste cans out
No.
there. Now, the day you received the letter from Mr. Romelli informing you that Nikki didn't work for him anymore, that was exhibit
February, dated February
11.
5.
February
11?
5. February 6, I believe, is when you got the email.
Exhibit 11.
Okay.
Was it? You said it was exhibit 11?
Yeah, you previously marked it as
Nicolosi 11.
Nicolosi 11. There we go. All right. So it looks like you got that email, I don't know, 2 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Earlier that day, I'm going to show you what I'm going to attach as exhibit 48. Ed Rapier is sending out to several people a draft contract for Ivy Waste.
Okay.
And you're on that email, so
Okay.
I'm going to ask you about that.
All right.
So this is an email from Ed Rapier to ebectorreslaw.com. You know who that
Okay,
is?
no. This is Erica.
That's one of Ivy Waste's lawyers.
I don't know.
Pat, you said 47, Patrick?
48.
48. It says Erica attaches a draft proposed contract. This is not written in stone and is subject to change. It has not been reviewed by all parties here in Kenner, but this lets you get started on your review. I still have to check internal references. Let me know if you have any questions. Now, what strikes me on this email is it's from Mr. Rapier to Ms. Torres, and it CCs the legal department in the city of Kenner, you, the mayor, and Nick Nicolosi.
Right.
Why was the city of Kenner including Nick Nicolosi in a first draft of a contract with Ivy Waste?
Object to the form of the question. It calls for speculation.
I don't know. I guess Ed was looking for his input on that.
So, was Mr. Nicolosi providing input on behalf of the city of Kenner, or was he providing input on behalf of Ivy Waste?
And let me back up on Ivy Waste, because you keep asking about Ivy Waste. John Litchfield told me directly that Ivy Waste did not hire Nikki. So Nikki did not work for Ivy Waste, all right? Prior to this time, I know that I got the letter at 2 o'clock, but we had been told maybe a week before, I don't remember, by Nikki he was no longer working with Mr. O'Malley.
Okay.
So at this point, I would assume Ed is simply looking for input from somebody who understands these contracts.
Deborah, I don't want you to speculate or guess what.
Okay, I don't
Yeah.
know what he was doing. Lawyers make terrible witnesses.
So you're confident from your conversations with Mr. Litchfield that at this time, February 6, 2020, Mr. Nicolosi was not working for Ivy Waste?
My understanding from speaking with Mr. Litchfield is that at no point was Nikki working for Ivy Waste.
So on February 6, was Mr. Nicolosi providing support to the city of Kenner?
I guess so, yeah. I guess as again, the trusted advisor position.
Okay.
He was someone who had dealt with this before.
And as a trusted advisor, was Nicky Nicolosi getting paid for his work?
No, not by us. And we're told not by IV, so I can't think of anybody else who would pay him.
Now that draft contract, if you look in section 6, that's the section that deals with rates. It's on page 32 of 55. So Mr. Rapier is sending a draft contract to Sidney Torres's lawyer and including the rate of $12.32. Is that right? Per service unit per month?
That's what this says.
Yeah. And you said earlier, it was always the city of Kenner's position that they were not going to pay more than the city was under contract with Mr. O'Malley.
And what was in the contract, correct.
And so how did the city come to the determination that $12.32 was that rate?
Well, again, this appears to be a draft. He says it's not written in stone. I know that we bounced around multiple drafts between the legal department and the finance department, calculating and coming up with different numbers. I think we had 3 versions of this. So I don't know, I can't sit here telling you what the rate was for Mr. O'Malley in his contract. This is before we get to the CPI issue, but in his contract what he was supposed to be paid, and in this contract what he was supposed to be paid, the instruction was that it should be the same. I don't know if this is or is not.
The $12.32.
Correct. I just know that there were multiple revisions to this contract over time, and I know they had to do with rate.
And so did you become aware after this draft contract was sent out that actually $12.32 was a higher rate than provided in Mr. O'Malley's contract?
I became aware at some point that we had put in a draft a number that was higher than what was in Mr. O'Malley's contract.
And in addition to put it in a draft, you actually put a higher rate in the executed contract
Then was in
Then
Mr.
was Mr.
Romelli's
Romelli's.
contract, or what he was being paid? That was always
Both.
okay, well, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, well, I'll walk you through that, so let's make sure we're on the same page. But as you sit here today, you're confident that the first draft contract that the city of Kenner sent to Ivy Waste for review included a rate that was higher than was provided for in Mr. Romelli's contract?
I don't know that.
Okay, do you recall emailing Greg Teft about this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so tell me who Mr. Teft is.
Mr. Teft is a member of the public, and Mr. Teft is someone who asks questions, and Mr. Teft is someone who will bring to our attention when something doesn't look right. Mr. Teft emailed me and asked me how could I explain all these differences, and I remember putting something together which I think was explaining what the differences were, but as we sit here now, I don't remember what that answer was or what I told him.
Okay. And do you correspond with Mr. Teft prior to council meetings?
Occasionally.
And do you do that so that he can have information to tell the council members?
No, it's for him to put out on he's the president or chairman or something of the University City Civic Association, and so largely what he does is put information, again, we don't send it to him, so he'll put it out, he asks us questions, we give him responses, and he puts it out. So he puts out information to his members and on Facebook.
And do you correspond with Mr. Teft in your personal email account as well as your city account?
Probably.
And does he email Mayor Zahn and Ed Rapier on their personal email
Don't know.
accounts? Have you and he had any discussions about
No.
him sending information
No.
to the administration's personal accounts?
No.
Why do you use your personal account to
Don't
correspond?
know, I don't know why that would go out that way.
Okay. Was there any discussion about there being a mole in the administration and people finding out information that you all didn't want them to know?
Well, there was nothing about the Romelli contract or the IV contract that would have been secret that we would not have wanted anyone to know.
Okay. There was a March 5 council meeting. Do you recall that council meeting?
No, sir.
Okay, that was the meeting that Mr. Romelli was there and had a big board.
I remember that meeting.
remember the board?
Yes, I remember Mr. Romelli.
And at that meeting, do you remember Mr. Romelli saying that your draft proposed contract with IV Waste was for more money than what he was getting paid?
He did say that. However, the draft contract with IV Waste included both components. It included the money being received or contracted for the recycling as well as curbside pickup. So while he was right based on what he was saying, I was also right based on what I was saying, and he called me a liar and he hurt my feelings.
Well, maybe we can clarify that today. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 49, which is a copy of March 5, 2020 ordinance with a executed contract dated 3/23/20 with between IV Waste and the City of Kenner. I should take a look at that.
Okay.
My understanding, the way the process works is the City of Kenner has to propose an ordinance.
Yep.
And then the mayor does the negotiation of the contract that is approved by ordinance, and then it's executed by the mayor. Is that?
It's approved by the council and then executed by the mayor.
And so at this council meeting on March 5th, the contract that was put forth to the city council called for a service fee of $11.96 per service unit.
Okay.
That's in section 6.1.
What page is that?
Of 31 of 52.
Okay.
So it appears at some point, and actually, let me see if I have it. Yeah, I'll show you what was previously marked as Exhibit Segur 22, was in his deposition. This was the contract that was dated final 2/18/20. And I represent to you that this was the contract that was posted to the agenda for the March 5 meeting.
Okay.
And if you look at the contract that's dated 2/18/20,
Wait, which one's dated 2/18/20?
Segur 22. This
Where are
one.
you finding the date?
And here on the footer.
Okay.
If you go
So
to
what's this one dated?
320,
320, 320? Okay, so this
yeah.
is the amendment, okay.
that's the amendment. So Segur 22 is the contract that went to the council before the meeting for
Correct.
vote. That
I assume that's
contract-
correct. Again, I don't remember, I don't know if something got amended, but I'm assuming, I'm relying upon your representation. Keep going.
I think I'm correct on this one, but
Okay.
you can double check.
I don't need to. I'll trust you.
6.1, this contract
6.1.
on page 31
Yeah.
of the February 18th,
Yeah,
the city was still proposing to do the work, to pay Ivy Waste $12.32 per service unit per
correct,
month, right?
correct.
So as of February 18th, what had the city of Kenner done to confirm that $12.32 was the rate that it was paying or the contract rate that Ramelli was entitled to?
Object to the form of the question, the extent it calls her
I
to
don't,
testify something about what she doesn't know.
I'm not sure, okay, so your question is, you're saying this was the one that was wrong that we revised in March, and you want to know what we did to make sure the wrong one was right?
Yeah, because you said early on, the city of Kenner said, we're not going to pay Ivy Waste
Which
more.
is why we have the revision.
So when you went to the council meeting on March 5th, you didn't know what rate
there was
the contract called for Mr. Ramelli to be
But
paid?
there was a typo in the contract?
I don't know. That's a
Well,
1232 is a typo?
I'm telling you that this is the correct number. When we got to that meeting, there was a dispute or disagreement between the CFO and the city attorney about what number is supposed to be in here. When I say here, I'm talking about the first one, which is why we ended up with the second one.
Okay.
All along, the plan was to pay in combined fashion, nothing more than what the contract called for in combined fashion with Mr. Ramelli.
Okay.
So if there's an error here, which there clearly is because they changed the number here, this should be that number.
Okay. Do you recall at the March 5th meeting that you stood up to the public and said, I have Mr. Ramelli's check.
I did.
And the exact amount, $12.32 being paid,
Nope.
ties to his check, and it's a rounding error of less than $200.
Nope. I stood up with the check that was a total number. The total number was exactly the amount, exactly the amount. The problem is this amount doesn't multiply out to the total number. I had his check and it did match verbatim the number on his board. The problem was when you multiply the number of service units times this number, you didn't get to the check number, you got to this number. That's what you got to. So, is this number wrong? Correct, this number is
Okay.
wrong. Was the bottom line number right? Yes, then the bottom line number was right.
All right. So we can both agree that the $12.32 service unit service fee for Ivy Waste in the February draft contract was more than the city was paying Ramelli.
If we had intended that, yes, but what I'm telling you is the number in that contract was not the number we were going to pay anybody. Because the instruction to the legal department was to put together a contract that paid exactly the amount in the contract. Now, there's a difference between what's in the contract and what he was billing for because he didn't include his CPI. But the point was, do not pay. We want to do apples for apples. So the amount, which presumably is in this second contract, this rate, I presume to be the amount that is in his contract with the accurate CPI calculated with the recycling.
Okay.
So this number is wrong.
The number in the February draft contract of $12.32 was wrong.
The $12.32 is wrong. The bottom line calculation, I had his check in my hand, and it was exactly verbatim. The problem was it didn't multiply out to the right number. So,
Gotcha. So who was responsible for coming up with the $12.32 rate, which you now acknowledge was greater than what Bob Ramelli was entitled to under his contract?
who put the wrong number in the contract?
Yeah.
Is your question.
Well, somebody had to calculate it, right?
No one calculated it. They made an error. This is the calculated number. There was a misunderstanding between the CFO, which at that time was Mike Wetzel, and the city attorney, which at that time was Ed Rapier. So if you if you watch the video of the meeting, you see the two of them going back and forth while I'm standing up talking. It's because this number is not the number that came from Mike. So.
And you're saying this number, you got to talk.
I'm so sorry.
Tell us what your point.
The reason we amended it, is because the wrong number was in the prior one. And who was responsible for putting the wrong number in there? I don't know who missed it, but both the CFO and the city attorney agreed after it was brought to their attention that was wrong. This more recent contract is the correct number.
Okay. So I appreciate that. I think we're on the same page. I'm just trying to synthesize it so that the record is clear. The draft February contract with IV Waste that included a service unit charge of $12.32 was erroneously put into this document.
Correct.
And it was erroneously done by a miscommunication between Mr. Wetzel and Mr. Rapier.
That's my assumption.
Okay.
I mean, I know there was a miscommunication, but that was never the intent.
You weren't involved in arriving at
was
that
not.
1232 number. Okay. But at the council meeting on March 5th, you did stand up and say, this 1232 number is the same.
I said the 66, whatever the number was on the check,
270,000.
was exactly what was on his board.
Actually, it was $200 off, and you said it was a
$200
rounding
off.
error.
Right.
So how did you determine there was a rounding
Because that's
error?
what I was told by the CFO
At the council meeting.
at the council meeting.
Okay. But then, to correct it, in March, the mayor entered into a new contract for $11.96.
Correct.
per
They didn't
service
correct the 270 now. That number would still be accurate. What they corrected was the actual per unit rate.
unit. And it went down to $11.96.
Correct.
And didn't it turn out that $11.96 was a higher rate than what was provided for in Mr. Romelli's contract?
To my knowledge, the number that was put in the final contract, if this is the final contract, is the number that was equivalent to what Mr. Romelli should have been paid under his contract.
So there were multiple final contracts because I filed several lawsuits and got them declared illegal.
Okay?
And the one you're looking at with $11.96 was declared illegal
Okay?
by Judge Steib because $11.96 was more than what Mr. Romelli's contract provided for.
I'll have to take your word for it. I'm not aware of any of our contracts being declared illegal by anybody. I'll take your word for it.
Well, I think technically the ordinance in Kenner requires that any increased rates on citizens lay over for over 28 days.
Oh, we had to do it again. That's right.
And
Okay.
it wasn't laid over.
So we did it again.
Because it was told to the public on March 5th
Correct.
that it was the same rate.
Correct. So it laid over again.
But then Mike Wetzel submitted an affidavit, which I'll show you as Exhibit 40. And he does the calculations as to what the rates would be allowed for in Mr. Romelli's contract.
Okay?
With CPI adjustments and with waiving the 2016 CPI adjustments. And his calculations were, it was either 1171 a service unit or 1180 a service unit.
Okay?
So my question is how did 1196 get into the contract?
Object to the form
don't
of the
know.
question. I don't think she knows that.
I don't know.
You don't know who did it.
Who did what?
Who put, you told me from the start.
Who put the number in the
Ivy Waste was
contract?
going to be paid what Romelli was
That was the
entitled
mayor's
to.
instruction.
Okay, so mayor instructed that 1196 go into that
The
contract?
mayor instructed the amount be what Romelli would have been paid had he been billing properly.
Okay, so in the March contract that the mayor executed, who arrived at 1196 per service unit?
I don't know. I would assume it's the CFO.
And the CFO was Mike Wetzel.
Correct.
And in front of you is his affidavit where he calculates the amount due Mr. Romelli under his contract is less than 1196 a service unit.
Okay.
So my question is You didn't have any discussions? There were no discussions inside of Kenner how we came up with
Did I?
1196? Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so who do I talk to in Kenner to find that out?
Legal department.
And that'd be Ed Rapier?
That would be Ed Rapier.
I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 50, which is an email on March 9th. So that would have been 4 days after the...
So this
Just let 'em know.
calculates through 2019. Where is 2020?
The CPI adjustment increases on July 1 of 2020.
Okay.
So it wasn't calculated for the IV waste contract because he took over on May 1.
Hold on. But the contract went up on July 1?
Yes, with the
See
CPI.
this amount?
To 1196? No, it went up to 1180. But I'll
Wait.
show you that in June.
Wait, it went up to 1180 from 1196? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I got those contracts
But that
declared
sounds like it went
illegal.
down.
And then you went down and you paid him 1128, which is what you were paying Mr. Romelli. And then a month later, you all signed a new contract that it went up to $11.80.
Okay.
I've lived these contracts for a while, as you can tell. I'm going to show you one of them, Mark, as Exhibit 50, which is an email on March 9th, 2020, to Greg Teff from you. So this is 4 days after the
Right.
council meeting, where Mr. Romelli said 1232 was higher than what he was getting. It looks like you say, I think this looks very good. We have identified one correction you might want to include. Romelli's contract says Romelli gets $11.96 for collecting and $1.90 for recycling with the CPI adjustment in July. We charge the customer $12.32 for collection, which is the collection cost we pay Romelli plus the River Birch tipping fee. Our proposed contract with IV inadvertently picked up the cost we pay Romelli and the cost we pay River Birch as the cost for pickup only.
Okay.
To be identical with Romelli, the IV contract will be $11.96 for pickup and $1.90 for recycling with a CPI adjustment July 1, 2020.
Okay.
Where did you come up with that information?
From the CFO?
Mr. Wetzel,
Yes.
did he put that in an email to you?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Because the affidavit he submitted to court has different numbers. Do you ever recall discussing that with Mr. Wetzel?
I recall discussing with Mr. Wetzel on multiple occasions how I kept getting different numbers from the legal department and the finance department over and over and over again, so it was challenging.
Is Mr. Wetzel the one that couldn't calculate it?
I don't know.
It's my understanding that Mr. Wetzel is no longer with Kenner.
He is not.
Do you know why he was let go?
I do.
Why was that?
I'm not going to discuss that personnel matter.
Does it involve...
Miscalculating his contract? No.
Okay.
And he was not let go, he resigned.
So when you say in here to be identical with Romelli, the IV contract will be $11.96 for pickup and $1.90 for recycling. So you believe the city of Kenner owes Romelli $1.90 for the recycling that it did?
Object to form
I
of question.
really can't, that's a legal opinion. I can't say. We were just trying to line this contract up so it would be equal to what Mr. Romelli would have been getting under the contract.
So it's your understanding that Mr. Romelli was entitled to $1.90 per service unit for recycling?
Again, what I'm saying is I'm repeating what's provided to me by the CFO. I'm here as a fact witness, not an expert. Not a legal opinion, not giving you a legal opinion on what Mr. Romelli was entitled to. We were simply trying to put together an equivalent contract. Can I get another water?
Yeah. Do you need to take a break?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Just keep it up, by the way.
I got it. Thank you.
I'm going to show you what I'm marking as Exhibit 51, which is a series of emails between you and Greg Teft. It's dated Friday, May 29, 2020. Ray line is Ramelli CPI, River Birch invoices. Down at the bottom of this email, on the first page, it's from you to Greg Teff, and it
Right.
says, "Me either. They took the federal calculator and
Wait.
tried to back out."
Wait.
I'm at the bottom of the first page.
Bottom, first page, okay. Okay.
Tried to back out the numbers into percentages, and I'm not sure it works like that. The difference in the numbers, depending on when you calculate it, is one of the reasons for going to a formula. Attaches the calculation from the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics for 2019. I'm getting 1178, which is still more than the 1128 we're actually paying Ramelli, and which we're actually paying IV until the new contract passes. So, did you make calculations as to what Mr. Ramelli was entitled to under the contract?
The CFO made calculations, and I tried to recalculate. Like I had him show me how he was getting that number, and I couldn't come to the same number he was coming to. So I didn't make a determination other than our numbers are messed up.
But your analysis at this point, whether it came from CFO or doing the calculations yourself, was that the city was actually paying Ramelli less than what he was entitled to under the contract.
I am not sure we can draw that conclusion from my math.
Well,
But my conclusion was that our numbers are coming out. We need to take a better look at figuring out how to accomplish this because our numbers are not coming out consistently.
as you sit here today, do you know whether or not the city of Kenner paid Ramelli for all the CPI increases that his contract provided for?
We paid for all of them except for the one that 16. I think there was something specific about 16 he waived off or something. But the funds used to settle the federal lawsuit were the funds from the CPI. But we're not supposed to talk about the federal lawsuit?
Oh, no, we're going to get into it.
I just
Don't
open it
worry.
up and
No,
I'm
you're not
We're gonna
supposed to,
get
but
into it.
Patrick will do it anyway.
Okay, all right.
So it's your understanding that the check that was issued to settle the federal civil rights claims against Mayor Zahn was a twofer. It covered the CPI increases that you didn't pay
It
Ramelli?
just covered the CPI increases, because when you say twofer, we didn't think we owed anything under the lawsuit, but that was a way that we could justify settling it by paying him the amount that we were going to have to pay him under the CPI. We owed him money under the CPI and we paid it.
How did you come to the calculation that $215,000 was owed for CPI?
Michael Wetzel did the calculation.
So you physically saw a calculation that said $215,000?
I was told this is the calculation. I was told by, or either, at that point it might not have been Mike, it might have been Liz Herring, but Ed Rapier is the one who gave me that information.
Were you aware that in part of the settlement of the federal case that the federal civil rights lawsuits against Mayor Zahn personally were dismissed with prejudice?
I don't really remember that detail.
Okay. How much of the $215,000 went to that?
Zero.
Zero. Now, it's my understanding that you were submitted an invoice from Ramelli for the unbilled CPI.
Yes.
Take a look at it. It's in front of you. It's exhibit.
Patrick, once I'm switching with Woody.
Sure. We got it somewhere. Here it is. Exhibit 39 on On June 25, Ramelli sent to you,
Is that in my file or no?
let me give it to you right
Oh,
now.
okay, sorry.
Exhibit 39 was an invoice for the unbilled CPI.
Okay.
What'd you do with that invoice?
Don't know.
Elizabeth Herring testified earlier today that that invoice never made it to the finance department for payment. Did
Okay.
you submit it to the finance department for payment?
Don't remember.
But it's your testimony that that's what the $215,000 settlement check paid.
Absolutely. Because it was given to legal department. And let me be clear, the amount paid was the amount we calculated we owed under the CPI. It kind of looks like he came in under what we thought we owed.
What did you think you owed?
Well, whatever the amount is that we gave you in that suit is what the calculation came out for us. So,
Are you aware that that number came, the $215,000 I negotiated with Matt Sherman?
Matt Sherman knew how much we had to be able to spend based upon this. This is what we told him we had was the CPI.
Were you aware that Mr. Ramelli refused to accept the check that referenced CPI?
He refused to accept the check or the settlement that referenced CPI, so the settlement now references for amounts owed under the contract, which as far as we're concerned is only the CPI.
And since you're a lawyer, were you aware that the settlement agreement said that this does not release any claims in the civil lawsuit, which include a claim for unbilled CPI?
I don't know what that says since I'm a lawyer. I don't really want to render a legal opinion. What I'm
asked you-
telling you is
I
as
asked
an
you whether you
from
were
an
aware of it.
operational perspective, the 100% of the amount that we have to pay Mr. Ramelli is the amount we owe him in CPI, and we have given that to him.
From a matter of fact, were you aware that the settlement agreement contained a provision that said it did not release any claims asserted in this lawsuit?
I do not believe that to be the case.
You don't believe that's what the agreement says?
I believe the agreement references, and I've been told this by the legal department, that it was for amounts owed under the contract. The only amount we owed under the contract was the CPI.
After Mr. Ramelli sent you the CPI invoice 39, here, I'll ask you this before I go away. I was looking for this earlier. I'll show you a May 30th letter, email 2020 Greg Teff to you. It's regarding garbage payment to contractor, Ramelli trash can, CPI calculator. Greg says, I sent this to Ed already. This is the email I plan to send to council members only. Please forward it to Ben's private email address. I only want the council to see this. I don't want it to get out to the wrong people. What was that reference? Who are the wrong people?
I don't know, but I would assume his reference to the wrong people would be people in other public interest groups who disagree with him, like the Citizens for a Better Kenner, and I can't remember the name of that. There's the name of a website, We from Kenner Bra. I'm guessing that's who he's referring to, but I don't know that for a fact. You'd really have to ask him.
And did you forward that to Mayor Zahn and his
I don't know
personal
if I
email?
did.
Now, here's one more email with Mr. Teff on the 30th where he talks about, what exhibit was that? 52?
52.
Mark it 53. Got one there. I should take a look at that.
Same one?
Same, did I give you the same one?
Looks like the same one.
All right, give it to me. Take that one back. This is the one. It's dated May 30th from Greg Teff to you. IV contract edited without attachments is the Ray line. I should take a look at that. Why is Mr. Teff sending you things that he plans on sending to city council members?
Oh, no.
Do you routinely do that?
No.
Did you do it several times over the IV waste contract?
I had multiple conversations or communications with him over IV waste.
He says, it's important for everyone to be on the same page. If a council member inquires or seeks clarification, we don't need more confusion. The goal is to have a strong majority of the council behind this. Also, keep this close. I'm hoping to flush out the mole. The opposition seems to be getting mixed, incomplete information from someone. What is he talking about there?
I don't know. I'm not aware of a mole.
You're not aware of them all.
Certainly not a Ramelli garbage IV waste mole.
So he sends you 2 emails on this day, May 30th, a Saturday, where he's talking about you sending information to the mayor on his personal email address, and don't send this out to other people because he's trying to flush out a mole and he doesn't want the wrong people to get this information. And you have no idea what he was talking about.
Well, I guess when he refers to that, I think he's referring to other people who post inaccurate information on social media. I don't believe he's talking about the city of Kenner staff.
But he was only sending to you at the city of Kenner, right?
Right, he's talking about how he's about to send it to the council.
So, given that it's your testimony that the $215,000 check was for CPI, where do I find the calculation as to how you came up to what was owed under the CPI?
That would be Ed Rapier for sure.
So, it's your understanding that Mr. Rapier, legal, calculated what was owed under CPI?
Mr. Rapier presented the settlement to the council. As you are aware, we cannot settle a case like this in an amount like this without council approval, and he presented it to the council as the amount that we owe under CPI.
Where did Mr. Rapier, was that at a public meeting?
Executive session.
Other than Mr. Rapier, did anyone else calculate?
Don't know, he could have talked to the CFO.
So given that Mr. Rapier or someone else calculated unbilled CPI in the Ramelli contract, you're certain that Mr. Ramelli did not bill the city of Kenner for all of his CPI that he was entitled to under his contract?
Before I got this invoice?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then after you got the invoice that he sent you, you didn't send that invoice to the finance department, right?
I don't remember if I sent it to the finance department or not. I probably gave it to the legal department
Okay. And then the legal department got that check cut.
after you guys negotiated. That was the justification for us being able to spend those funds.
That was the justification that Mr. Rapier told the city council
Correct.
to get authorization.
Correct.
Why does Mr. Rapier no longer work for the city of Kenner?
Mr. Rapier left the city services.
Was he fired?
He was told by the mayor his services were no longer needed.
Operationally, does that mean he was fired?
Well, operationally, he was separated from his employment, so fired. I guess you could say he was fired.
Have you had any conversations with the mayor about why Mr. Rapier was fired?
Yes.
What has the mayor told you?
It's a personnel matter that I don't feel like I need to discuss. I'm obligated to discuss a personnel matter in this deposition. Ms. Stewart?
And you can go ahead and, we'll reserve the objection, but you can go ahead and answer the question.
But if I might note, just for the record, it is a personnel matter.
I think there's a privilege asserted
Not
with it.
subject to disclosure.
Right.
And just lodge that objection.
That's fine. You can still answer it.
I don't know if I can.
This is how depositions work. You
I
reserve
do
your
know how
objection.
depositions work,
Yeah.
Hank. I recognize that part. I'm just trying to figure out how.
I'm not asking you.
You're asking me what my conversations with the mayor are
Correct.
about Mr. Rapier.
Those are not privileged conversations. You're
that-
not his lawyer.
Well, to the extent she would be giving advice, they would be privileged. So I don't know I would rely on you to say whether you think they're privileged or not. If they're not privileged, you would have to answer over the objection, but if they're privileged, then I think
The mayor lost confidence in his ability to provide adequate legal services.
I didn't know you were back there. I need your name for the
What in particular did the mayor? I didn't either.
Just quiet.
Okay.
What particularly did the mayor lose confidence in Mr. Rapier's ability to provide adequate legal services
It
to
was in general.
same objection.
in general? So overall, the mayor was not happy with Mr. Rapier's performance.
By the time Mr. Rapier left, the mayor was not happy with Mr. Rapier's performance.
Do you know whether it had anything to do with the fact that Mr. Rapier misrepresented to the city council what in fact that $215,000 payment was for?
I'm going to object to the form of the question, and I think it mischaracterizes the testimony from before.
I'm not aware that he misrepresented to the council, but also I don't believe that that's a specific that led to this.
You're aware that the mayor issued 22,000 letter citations to Mr. Ramelli?
I'm aware that he issued a citation for 22,000 violations. I'm not aware of actual 22,000 citations, right? It's one citation for 22,000, but yes.
Violations, yes.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that that was written up at a Paso restaurant in Kenner on May 12, 2020 for lunch. Were you at that lunch?
I don't know. I don't remember that specific.
So then I take it you didn't have any involvement in,
I was aware of it.
were you aware of the citation being issued before Mr. Ramelli was served with it?
I was served with what?
The citation?
The citation was issued before he was served with the citation?
No, I asked whether you were aware of the citation before Mr. Ramelli got it
Yes.
served on him.
Yes.
So how did you become aware of,
I was told that it was happening.
and who told you that?
The legal department.
Ed Rapier?
Yes.
Did you have any discussions with Mayor Zahn about the issuance of the litter citations?
Not separate from Ed Rapier.
So you had a conversation with the mayor and Ed Rapier,
Yes.
and that was before the citations were issued.
Yes.
Was anyone else present in that meeting?
First, I don't know if it was a meeting. I think it was a phone call, and I don't recall anyone at Lee Roussel may also have been involved or present. I don't remember anyone else. Chad Pitfield, perhaps. Chad Pitfield.
And what was your understanding of why this citation was issued to Mr. Romelli?
Because he wouldn't retrieve his cans. And by failing to retrieve his cans, they were filling up with garbage, which we were by court order prohibited from touching. So it made it very difficult to service the needs of the city.
You were under the impression that the court order prevented the city of Kenner from touching the cans?
I don't remember when this happened timeline-wise. We ended up touching the cans. So at some point we recognized we could touch the cans.
You still, in May of 2020, believe that you had a contract with Romelli for janitorials, for garbage services, right?
Yes.
So why didn't the city just order Romelli to dump the cans under his contract with the city?
Could have done that.
So why didn't it?
Don't know. I think they thought that IB was going to be able to perform.
After the TRO was issued, why did the city not just have Mr. Romelli pick up the cans under his contract?
Asked and answered.
Yeah, I think after the TRO was issued, we already had Romelli, we had IB cans on the street. You're asking why we didn't have IB pick up IB cans and Romelli pick up Romelli cans all at the same time?
Well,
I guess we could have.
Isn't that the point of having multiple contractors to the city?
Well, except you don't want to charge people $24 for service. Basically, if each house has both. Could we have done that? Yeah, I'm not sure. At the time, and you remember when COVID started, none of us, we're all planning for, okay, we're going to be out 6 weeks. And so we keep thinking next week it's going to be better, and we're working on trying to assess a problem a week at a time. Nobody had the long view of how long this was going to run on. So could we have? Yeah, we could have. At the time, it did not seem like the right thing to do.
The issue with the Romelli cans was that they were full of garbage,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And you were understanding that you had a contract with Mr. Romelli that obligated him to dispose of the garbage in his cans.
He had already been advised as of, I don't remember the date, but that he was to cease and desist at that point, and we already had IB cans out on the street. They were slow in rolling out, and so we ended up with the situation we had.
And you didn't have the thought of, well, if Romelli's with my contractor, I'll just have him dump the cans.
Object, asked and answered.
I don't really know if we were in the process of having that discussion when we were being sued by him. So I don't think that really occurred as an option.
Do you recall in March of 2020, the administration telling the finance department that they would have no discussions with Romelli and that all questions need to go to legal?
No, but I'm not surprised.
All right, can we take a break, get organized? I've got a little more to go.
Off the record, the time is now 2:24. Back on the record, the time is now 2:35.
Mr. Foshi, just to finish up on the $215,000 payment, the settlement issue, you said Mr. Rapier got city council authority to issue that check, correct? Were you at that council meeting
Yes.
in executive session?
Yes.
Did he provide a copy of the settlement agreement to the council
Don't
members?
remember.
Okay, I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 54, which is a copy of the settlement agreement. Have you ever seen a copy of this before?
I don't know if I have.
So
I'm going to ask you.
before you do, is this the one that was confidential?
Yeah.
Okay.
Between us and Kenner,
Right.
between the parties.
Okay. So we're attaching it to the subject of the confidentiality.
I'm fine with it. Actually, I don't believe this has a confidentiality provision in it. Doesn't have a confidentiality.
Okay. That's what I was making sure of. Okay.
All right. So, in this settlement agreement, turn to the second page, if you would. In the second paragraph, it says payment and release. Defendants shall tender to plaintiffs the full true sum of $215,000 on or before January. The payment is being made in connection with the contract, but shall in no way discharge, release, reduce, offset, or otherwise affect the Louisiana claims in the 24th JDC lawsuit.
Okay.
Is that consistent with what Mr. Rapier told the city council?
You're asking me legal opinion at this point.
I'm asking you, did
Operationally, Mr. Rapier said that the money that we were providing was the money, the justification for that is that we already owed Mr. Romelli that money because we owed him the CPI. And the only reason he'd not been paid is because he had not previously billed us. And you're asking me to construe whether that implies he's inaccurate because of this. I think that's a legal opinion. I can't draw that conclusion at this point.
Fair enough. Did Mr. Rapier inform the city council that Mr. Romelli was still suing the city of Kenner for the unbilled CPI?
He advised that he was still suing the city of Kenner. Period.
For owing money under the contract.
For owing money under the contract.
Okay. So then, paragraph 3, where it says, this settlement agreement shall encompass only claims asserted in the federal lawsuit.
Okay.
Did he make that clear to the city council?
He simply said that I don't really think that I can answer it beyond what I've already stated, and that is that he said our justification for making this payment was that we already owed Mr. Romelli the CPI. He had not billed us. Had he billed us, we would have paid him. So that was the justification for providing any money in settlement. There was no admission of liability. There was no admission that we had done anything.
Can I-
It was
And now,
Patrick, can I please object just to the extent that any conversations that would have been had in executive session regarding the settlement agreement would have been
privileged,
privileged? You can still answer,
Okay.
Deborah, to the extent.
okay.
sure. Was it made clear to the city council that Mr. Romelli was reserving all causes of action and claims arising out of his contract with the city of Kenner?
I think that's a legal conclusion, and I don't know that Ed explained it beyond the fact that he was still suing us.
Okay, fair enough. Do you recall, we testified earlier about the issue with the dumpsters, invoices
Yeah.
that Romelli submitted. I think you said you thought at the end it was resolved.
Again, this was under Chad Pitfield's purview. He brought it to me at the point at which he said, I think we're getting billed for dumpsters that we don't have. But then when he brought it to me, it looked like we were getting dumpsters picked up that weren't on the list. So my understanding was that at least at the point at which we paid or they paid, I mean, sitting here right now, I can't even tell you if we concluded they owed us money or we owed them money, but that we had at least figured out how to catch up.
Okay.
And that we were going to do a better job going forward, and they were going to do a better job going forward when we said we're closing a facility, we're opening a facility, to let them know.
Did you come to any conclusion on whether or not you thought there was any ill will or fraud being taken by Romelli on
With
these
the
dumpsters?
dumpsters, I don't. I mean, I think it was just, I think it was just a miscommunication. Like we just kept paying and they just kept billing, and I'm not sure. Maybe we should have done a better job communicating. Maybe they should have audited sooner. I don't know. But Chad is the one who brought it to my attention, and Chad went out and said, "Here's where I think our dumpsters are."
Okay. I've got some documents, some exhibits I want to go through just to make sure we're on the same page, and it might refresh your recollection.
Okay.
First one I'm going to show you is a document marked Exhibit 55, which is a January 3 email from Nick Nicolosi to people at Romelli.
Okay.
And some Kenner people. You're not on it, but I just
Okay.
wanted to ask you some questions about it. It starts off down at the bottom. It's an email from Adam Campo
Right.
to Nikki.
Got it.
So who is Adam Campo?
At this point, Adam Campo was the internal auditor. Adam Campo is now the compliance officer.
Internal auditor for the city of Kenner?
Correct.
All right, and he was an employee of Kenner, or he
He is
worked
an-
for Solulin?
No, he is an employee of Kenner.
So why is he sending an email on his personal Gmail account to Nikki, you know?
I have no idea.
So it looks like attached to this is a memo, December 18, 2009, from Chad. Is this kind of the audit you were talking about, Mr. Pitfield, doing with the,
Yeah.
all right. So what was Adam Campo doing with that?
Well, it would have been referred to Adam as an internal audit to
Okay.
see whether there was an issue.
All right. And so at that time, Adam worked for the city of Kenner.
Yes.
So then Nikki looks like he's flipping it to Romelli saying, attached, please find correspondence from Adam Campo, city of Kenner. They recently inventoried Kenner locations. According to Romelli Inverse, is supposed to have cans. Kenner wants us to review the report and take corrective action as outlined in the report as soon as possible. Is that consistent with what you recall
Yes.
happening? Okay. And then it looks like in March of 2020, I'm going to show you what I marked as Exhibit 56, which is an email from David Starks with Romelli to you. And actually below it's your email
Okay.
of March 19. It says, Dave, your email was forwarded to me. Before Nikki left, we presented him with evidence that we're being charged for dumpsters that were not ours, and perhaps for pickup there was no dumpster. I'm working off a memory here as I'm at home without access to the file. We requested an accounting from Romelli. I'm not aware that we received that and do not know if we owe you or you owe us at this point. Can you check into that for me? Once straightened out, we'll be happy to catch up on any undisputed amounts.
Yep.
So you recall, that's consistent with your
That's
recollection?
consistent with my recollection.
So you followed up in March with Romelli.
Right.
Here is an email, I'll mark as Exhibit 57. Ask you to take a look at it. It's dated March 9, 2020. From Jamie Hastings to you, Adam Campo.
Bob Sternhow, Colin Sternhow. What is this?
Looks like it's a appointment for a lunch.
The thing is
Appointment.
attached?
We'll update with, and it's concerning Romelli. So my question is what is Solulent doing about Romelli at this point?
So they're largely our outside auditor. I don't recall, maybe we were going to talk to them about possibly stepping in as an auditor on this. I really don't remember them actually doing any work.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not you went to lunch with them?
I don't recall that either.
So that was, what number was that exhibit?
57.
All right. All right. I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 58, which is an April 15 email from Mr. Wetzel. So he was the head of the finance department, right?
Correct.
And he says, this looks like they're sending, Romelli's sending March invoices and, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, Woody.
That's all right.
And on April 15th, Mr. Wetzel is saying, wastewater can be processed. Deborah, are we still holding up dumpster payments for recreation?
Okay.
During this audit, were you holding up payments to Romelli for the
We were.
dumpsters? Okay. So I take it then, the audit was around December of 19, and this is in April. So you hadn't paid Romelli dumpster invoices?
I don't know when we stopped paying.
here's an email of May 4th from David Starks to you, corrected revised billing. Mark this as Exhibit 59.
Okay.
And it says, I've completed a thorough and comprehensive audit of the dumpster billing statements from period November 19 to March 19. Ramelli owes the city a credit of $4,865.73. I have the complete audit documents as well as corrections made to the collection addresses as requested. How would you like me to get these documents to you? Thank you and praying you're well. Do you recall Mr. Starks getting you the information on his audit?
I do recall him responding to us.
All right. I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 60, which is a May 13, 2020 letter to you from Mr. Starks.
Actually, this is from Bob.
I'm sorry, it's from Bob. It appears to be, it's got attached to it the original audit, and
Right.
it's got revised invoices
Yep.
addressing going back to 19, like Mr. Stark said he had gathered.
Right.
What did you do with this invoice when you got it?
I don't remember.
Do you know, it's my understanding the city hasn't paid this invoice.
I'm not aware of that. If we haven't paid it, we need to pay it right now.
Okay. Elizabeth Herring testified earlier today, and she's given an affidavit at this time period from May 1, 2020 through December 2020. She's gone through and pulled all of the dumpster invoices that are in the PaperVision system
Okay?
at City of Kenner, and these invoices that are referenced in Exhibit 60 are not in the PaperVision system. So, do you have anything to dispute that?
I don't know about PaperVision, but it would have been given to the legal department.
Okay.
All communications with Melly went to the legal department.
And so in this May 12, 2020 revised invoice from Ramelli, it's got a total due of,
Can I take a copy with me?
sure? It's got a total due from November 19 through March of 20 of $63,474.05.
Okay.
Do you know whether or not you agreed with that amount? or
Absolutely.
You agreed with it?
I
Okay.
did.
And so you thought that Ramelli was due this $63,474.05 for the dumpsters?
My conversation with Chad Pitfield was, look at this and make sure you agree with that. I don't remember him objecting. And then I thought I verbally told Mike Wetzel to pay it, but the physical copy would have gone to the legal department. So if we didn't have communication, it didn't get there. But I am embarrassed if we did not pay it. We will pay it immediately.
Great. See, my time was justified
See,
today.
Justin, you got me something. Guess that means I gotta pay you.
There you go. That's right.
So are you moving to dismiss, did I understand?
Oh, we did.
All right. Now I want to talk to you about operations, IV's operations
Yep.
for recycling.
Okay.
It's my understanding, we looked at the contracts earlier, IV is paid $1.90 per service unit per month for recycling. Is that your recollection?
Whatever is in the contract.
And that is, do you know how many, not all homes in Kenner recycle, correct?
No.
Do you know how many homes actually have ordered the recycle bin from IV Waste?
No.
Who would know that? Chad Pitfield?
Probably Julie Tafaro at Ivy Waste.
Do you think it's half of the citizens, a third?
I don't know.
No. But all citizens are charged $1.90
Correct.
per month for recycling,
That's
if you
correct.
use it or if you don't.
Right, if you use it or if you don't. Because people are also, it also goes to defray the cost of the drop station, which got heavily used after Ida.
Okay. What do you mean it goes to defray the cost?
So the 190 is for recycling, including the recycling drop-off at the drop station, and the haul-off of the woody waste and the white goods. And we haven't gotten all the way up to electronic waste yet, but we'll end up having those like public recycling days a couple times a year.
So when Mr. Ramelli did the recycling for Kenner, I understood he picked up the recycling from the curbside and he took it to a MRF facility, a recycle facility.
Help me with MRF facility. It may have been what he and I were talking about at coffee about the facility he might want to build here because he was having trouble with the. Okay, all right.
What do you call? What does MRF stand for?
Municipal, it's recycling.
It's recycling.
Okay.
Municipal recycling facility is probably
Yes.
what MRF
Yeah.
stands
Okay.
for. And it's my understanding that IV Waste doesn't take the recyclable directly from the curb to a recycle facility. Are you aware of how IV Waste
I don't know.
handles the recycling?
I don't know. First off, I can't agree with what your assumption because I don't know.
Okay. Were you aware that IV Waste is picking up recycling from the curbs and dumping it on the city lot?
I'm not aware of that. Are we talking about during the storm?
No.
Okay. No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. It's my understanding that IV Waste has built an enclosure in the city's yard on, what is it, 1707 and 1803 Williams?
We're not talking about the drop station?
Yeah, the drop station.
That's for the public.
Correct. But have you been to the drop station? Have you seen the area that's got a fence and
The whole thing has a fence
a locked gate that's
In-
surrounded by wood?
that goes into the gas station.
No, it's in the back corner.
I'll have to go look. I don't know.
Well, there is a part of that facility that IV Waste has built that is surrounded by a fence and has a concrete floor, and 2 40-yard dumpsters are dumped in that, or put in that space, and
Okay.
recycling from yards
Goes into the bigger dumpsters.
goes into those dumpsters there.
Okay.
Are you aware of that or no?
No.
Who at Kenner would be aware of that?
Chad Pitfield.
All right. Anyone else?
No.
Who would be responsible? And it's my understanding they're using that as a transfer station
Okay.
for the recycling.
Correct.
In other words, they pick it up, they dump it there, they wait, then they put it in a container, and then they take it away.
Okay.
Are you not aware of that?
Well, I'm not aware, but I also don't know what the problem would be. Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, we're about to get to that.
Oh, okay.
All right. Are you aware that the city doesn't have a permit with the LDEQ to operate a transfer station there?
Don't know.
Okay. So who would be responsible for obtaining permits to operate a transfer station on the city property?
I'm not sure what, again, I don't know the term of art or transfer station, but the Chad Pitfield will be responsible for the overall operations.
Okay. And does IV Waste submit to you their invoices and
No,
their?
they submit them to Chad.
Okay. At one point, did they, when they started?
They may have in the very beginning when we're trying to make sure the format was accurate, because there's a number of reports that we asked for. So I think I remember asking Julie in the beginning to send them to me to look at, but after the first time or two, I don't really remember seeing after that.
Okay. Well, like with Ms. Herring, you know, if you sign an affidavit, you're going to get questions about it.
Did I sign an
You didn't sign an
affidavit?
affidavit, but you got an email.
Okay, all right, close
With an
enough.
invoice, so
Close
you're getting
enough.
questions.
Close enough.
Take a look at what I'm going to mark as Exhibit 61,
Okay.
which is an August 4, 2020
Roll off, roll off, roll off. Okay.
email to you from Julie. It says,
All right.
Deborah, attached, please find open top invoice for July 2020 and our recycling MRF tickets.
Okay.
Now, MRF tickets are what gets deposited at the facility. Have you seen these before?
I don't. There are MRF tickets, but I don't see MRF tickets here. I have seen MRF tickets before, but I don't see any attached.
You don't think this you see the last one says Baton Rouge MRF at the top left?
Yeah, but that's like for one day.
Correct.
Like when we got them, it was a big, like it was a batch.
Right.
Okay. So I'm just being shown this one for a reason.
Well, this is the email she sent you with their invoices and their recycling tickets.
Okay, well, what I have seen from her has a big batch attached to it.
Okay. Let's go through her invoice.
Okay,
So the first thing is he's charging $350 a roll-off cart for stuff at the Kenner transfer station.
Right.
What is that?
that is where we take woody waste, and it's the public drop-off station. But you can take woody waste, you can take recyclables. There's an area where you can take white goods. During the storm, it's being used a lot more than regular, but it's open to the public. Right now, it's open to the public pretty much every day, but on regular days, it's only open like a few days a week.
All right. And so it looks like under these charges for the transfer station, IV Waste is bringing 30-yard containers, multiple ones, on a daily basis,
Okay?
and they're taking this to River Birch?
I don't know. I don't know.
Have you not asked them what these charges are for?
Well, we talked about it when I got it, but I guess I need to follow up and see.
Okay. On the second page of this invoice, there's a type of contaminated recycling.
Yeah.
What are those charges for?
That's recycling that can't be taken to the recycling location.
Why can't they be taken to the
Because they end up mixed in with something that's not recyclable. Like sometimes people put the recycling in bags and we can't see what's in there. Or sometimes they'll recycle, but there'll be something contaminated, pizza boxes, or, it's amazing what people think you can recycle.
Do you know how IV Waste has come into the conclusion that this recycling is contaminated?
No.
Before today, as you sit here today, you weren't aware that IV Waste is taking all of the recycling and dumping it.
Well, again,
At the drop
you're
site.
saying that A, I don't know that, B, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's an issue with that. You're going to have to talk to Chad.
Okay, Chad would be the person.
Yeah.
Now, you were aware that Mayor Zahn sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney saying Bob was doing something illegal, or actually he went on WWL and said he defrauded the people of Kenner by taking recycling to the landfill.
Okay.
You recall that?
I don't recall that.
All right, well, I guess we can do that tomorrow with him. In any event, in July of 2020, Mr. Torres charged the city of Kenner $6,300 for taking recycling that was contaminated and dumping it at the landfill.
That's what I'm guessing.
And that's in addition to the $1.90 per service unit per resident that he's billing the city for collecting recycling and disposing of it at a MRF facility.
Well, I don't really know what I'm looking at. Okay.
There's no question.
No, that is the question.
I'm not I know that we negotiated a roll-off rate in the contract for city garbage. So I'm guessing what's happening here is contaminated recycling is being treated as city garbage. I mean, I don't know that. That's really a Chad question, but that's what I'm assuming. Can I have a copy of this one too?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, so these were the July. So that was 1 month or a couple months into working for the city. Now, I'm going to show you a report that the city provided to me in response to a public record request. And I'm going to mark this as Exhibit 62. And it's a City of Kenner annual audit report for recycling. I ask you if you've ever seen that before.
No, I'm going to say no, and you're going to pull out an email where I got it. but
Is
I
that a
don't-
Chad Pitfield question?
I think so. I don't remember seeing this.
But apparently, this is a report of
Annual report.
how much tons of recycling that IV is bringing to the recycle facility.
Right. I would assume that's what that is.
Have you done any analysis to determine whether IV Waste is bringing more recycling to the recycle facilities or less than Ramelli did when Ramelli was the recycling contractor?
So we were told in the beginning by IV Waste that they were doing more, and they had some numbers that they were comparing. I have not heard anything about that since the first couple of months, and I don't know if Chad's doing a comparison.
Okay. So it looks like, and we just looked at the July 20 invoices, it looks like in May, IV had 64 tons of recycling to recycle facility. The next month it went down to 42 tons, and then in the month of July, that's when he built that drop site for the city, right? He was so generous to spend $200,000 of his own money to build that drop site. And after he's opened that drop site, his recycling has gone down by 75% some months. The month of July, it was 4 tons. The month of August, it was 15 tons.
So what, you're thinking he's throwing it away?
He's not just throwing it away. He's billing you to send the contaminated waste to River Birch. So in addition to paying him $1.90 per service unit, you all are paying him between $6,000 and $12,000 a month to take the contaminated recycling and dump it in the landfill.
I object. That's testimony. That's not a question.
I guess I shouldn't be asking questions. Okay, stop asking questions. But I'm like, are we suggesting that, like, it's not contaminated? Like, why would we go? You're pointing out that it went
That's
from
the
42 to
uncontaminated.
4.
That's the uncontaminated.
So uncontaminated went from 42 to 4
Correct.
because it's being called contaminated and hauled off.
Yes, because it's being dumped at your drop site behind the fence, being called contaminated, and taken to River Birch.
Wow. All right, can we copy that one too? I'm putting a stack of what I need.
All right. And just for your other stack, so you can give this to whoever needs to, here's a copy of your LDEQ permit to operate that facility in
Okay.
Kenner. And it's an emergency debris site. It's not a transfer station.
Okay.
And it's not permitted. I'm going to mark that at Exhibit 63.
No, I have seen
Were
that.
you aware that the facility that the recycling is being dropped by IV Waste is not a permitted LDEQ facility for a transfer station?
I don't know that to be a fact.
Okay. Who would be responsible for figuring that out?
Chad Pitfield, but probably in conjunction with the legal department.
I'm going to show you another report that the City of Kenner produced to me in response to a public records request, and I'll mark it as Exhibit 64, which is IV Waste recycling records for the month of October 2020. So according to the City of Kenner's records for October, IV Waste had 60 tons of contaminated recycling and 15.49 tons of recycling that they took to a facility. Were you not aware that a majority of the recycling that IV Waste is picking up every month, they're dumping in the landfill?
I was not aware that they were representing that the majority of what they're picking up is contaminated. I am aware that contaminated is dumped in the landfill, but I was not aware of this percentage being reported as the contaminated portion.
In fact, these records that City of Kenner produced, to me, reflect that only 4 days in the month of October did IV Waste take any tonnage to a MRF facility. And those tonnages, do you know how
What
much?
are you looking at?
The last page of this exhibit.
This one, okay?
Do you know how much a truck carries?
I do not.
It's my understanding that 2.5 tons is not even a half a truckload for recycling material. Do you know where IV Waste is taking their recycling to be?
They're non-contaminated?
They're non-contaminated.
I don't know.
They're taking it according to these records that we looked at earlier to a facility in Baton Rouge.
Right, okay.
And they're responsible for driving all of the recycle to a MRF facility, in this case Baton Rouge, to
Right.
dispose of for $1.90 per service unit.
Right.
But in fact, what they're doing is they're taking a majority of your recycling every month They're putting it in 30 to 40 yard containers and they're dumping it at River Birch, and the city of Kenner is paying for it. Were you not aware of that?
We'll
Well,
object to the extent that council has testified, but you can answer the question.
Well, I think I was not aware that that volume of contaminated, I was not aware that we were being told that we had that high volume of contaminated recyclable.
Let's look at what was previously marked as. Well, do you recall any conversations with IV Waste about them having problems with contaminated recycling?
No. I do recall them asking us to put out messages about what is recyclable and what is not, because they were getting non-recyclable materials mixed in, but I think we did that with Ramelli as well.
It's got the wrong file, sorry. Look at the wrong file. I'll show you what was previously marked as Exhibit 45, which is a series of invoices from IV Waste for the month of December 2020.
Okay.
Would those invoices been submitted to you for review, or that would go straight to Chet?
No, they would really not be submitted to me for review. I mean, if there's an issue or there's concern, it would be brought to my attention, but no, they would not normally come to me.
All right, so let's go through Mr. IV Waste December 2020 invoices. So it looks like page 1 is the rate he's charging for residential garbage pickup.
Right.
So that's his contract rate of $11.80.
Right?
But he's not charging 22,000 units like Mr. Ramelli charged the city.
Right.
He's charging 22,615.
Correct.
How did it get up to that?
Because he has barcode scanners on every can, and when he would drop them off, he would line it up with the water bills. We do have some that we think are multiples. So, but again, at this point, the agreement was that they would provide us with the scanning. We would pay that amount, but we would agree to, they would reduce it based upon any audit that we came up with.
Okay. Then the next bill, the next page of Exhibit 45 is the $1.90 rate he's charging for 22,615 units, service units for recycling.
Yep.
All right. All right. Then the next bill is $12,000 for street sweeping.
Right.
What street sweeping is IV Waste doing?
They do it on a as needed basis. We have 2 street sweepers. Usually one is broken, sometimes both are broken. I don't remember about this particular time if there was a specific reason we were cleaning up, or we just were completely out of street sweepers. I don't know.
Were you not aware that IV Waste bills the city of Kenner for street sweeping every month?
I would not be surprised if they did it every month. I would be surprised it was the exact same amount every month.
It's my understanding from Ms. Herron that there's only one contract in place with IV Waste, and that's the residential garbage contract.
Okay.
I'm unfamiliar of any provision in that applies for street sweeping.
Okay.
Is there a separate contract that you're aware of that the city agreed to pay for street sweeping?
I would have to look into that. I don't know sitting here what the authority is for that. However, Liz would not normally pay an invoice if there were no contract to pay it against, so. I'd have to find out what contract she's paying us off of.
Does the city of Kenner have their own street sweeper?
We do. They're finicky.
So what is your understanding as to why the city of Kenner is paying IV Waste for street sweeping?
Well, there's a period of time as a result, and again, I don't know which time. We ended up during COVID having every single person working in the field put on quarantine twice. So there were 2 separate times we had no one in the field at all. I know we relied upon a variety of vendors at that point, probably including these guys. But again, I would need to follow up and figure out the specifics of why we need additional street sweepers. We do not have enough street sweepers to keep the city clean. That being said, I don't know if there's a specific event. Are we preparing for a specific event, or?
My review of the city's records since April of 2020 through the records I have, March 2021, city has paid at least $12,000 a month to IV Waste for street sweeping, except for the month of August. And in the month of April, it was $6,000.
Okay.
So it's your understanding that there's a need for street sweeping for IV Waste on a monthly basis?
If that really is Chad's call, because he knows what the volume is of the work out in the field. And he has the authority to trigger that, but I need to look and see that contract.
Well, I have their contract if you want to look at it.
No, I would need to know what the contract is we're paying for the street sweeping under.
All right, then the next page of this invoice after street sweeping, these would be the charges for the dumpsters that are identified in his contract to be picked up and serviced.
Okay.
These are the same ones that Mr. Romelli used to pick up from.
Okay.
Does that look consistent with you?
I don't really know.
The next page after that is a $2,050 invoice for outstanding invoice. I don't know what that is.
Neither.
The next page is the Kenner Transfer Station at 1707 23rd Street in Kenner. So is that the drop-off site?
That, I think, is a drop-off site.
Okay. So it appears that he's charging $9,100 for doing something with 30-yard roll-off containers. Do you know what that
I
is?
would assume that is woody waste and other things that are dropped off at the drop center. That's what that should be.
Okay. And then the next thing is contaminated recycling at 1707 23rd Street.
It is a lot of contaminated recycling.
And that's $9,100 the city paid Mr. Torres on top of the $1.90 per household to dispose of contaminated recycling. Is that what I'm seeing?
That is what that looks like to me, but I'm going to have to investigate further.
You do know that his contract requires him to pay all costs of transportation for the recycling for the $1.90 fee.
For the recycling, right. But contaminated recycling is trash, but I'm not sure we thought about how to calculate it because of this sheer volume. Right, I'm not aware of this. I've never been told before that we have this sheer volume of contaminated recycling.
Okay. Then there's another category at 1707 23rd Street.
That's Kenner Yard, that's city.
Kenner Yard, what is that?
That's the city. That's our generated trash. That's what we pick up, things in the street, grass clippings, broken signs, anything the city picks up.
So it looks like IV Waste in the month of December was charging you 4 to maybe 7 30-yard roll-off swaps a day to get rid of garbage that you all picked up and brought to them?
I don't know.
So this would be an additional $50,750 that Ivy Waste billed you all for this dumpster.
Yep.
You weren't aware of that?
I'm aware that we get charged per roll-off. I'm not aware, specifically looking at this invoice, which things in which roll-off.
By my calculations, the month of December, Ivy Waste billed the city $393,175.50 for its services. How does that compare to what Ramelli Waste billed the city?
Don't know.
Well, we have as an exhibit that we looked at earlier. Let me ask you this. I'll show you exhibit 33, which was Ramelli's invoices for garbage and residential services for the month of March 2020.
Okay.
And that plus its dumpster bills on average was around $285,000 to $290,000 a month. So it appears to me, for at least the month of December of 2020 compared to 2019 or March of 2020, that Ivy Waste is billing the city about $100,000 more a month than Ramelli.
Object.
Is that news to you?
I am relying upon your representations as to this. A lot of what Ivy Waste is doing is picking up things at the drop site that we didn't have before. We have a lot of things coming into the drop site. Ultimately, the specifics of that you're going to need to get from Chad Pitfield.
Okay, so he built a facility and gave it to the city for $200,000, but he's billing the city $50,000 a month to pick up stuff.
Again, I've got to identify. I have to follow up on what you're telling me. I'm relying upon your representations.
Well, these are the city's records. You all produced them to me. I didn't create these myself.
Those aren't the city's records. You're looking at IV's records. I'm objecting to your own testimony. Those are IV records.
Matt, you haven't been around, but the earlier testimony was these came to me from a public records request to the city of Kenner.
Patrick, there's a difference in whose records they are and who produced them, and you know that. You're looking at IV records, and you're asking a witness that's not qualified. You had the CFO here earlier today. You should have asked her all these questions.
All right.
Chose not to. Those are not
Matt, will you please stop with the speaking objections?
Stop making statements that aren't true.
Okay. Who's responsible for getting LDEQ permits for the transfer station in the city of Kenner?
On an emergency basis or on a routine basis?
No, to operate a transfer facility for the dropping off of recycling, which Ivy Waste has been doing since July of 2020.
Okay, I'm relying upon your statements to be accurate that it is required. LDEQ permitting for that facility would go through Chad Pitfield. In an emergency, it would go through the Emergency Operations Director, which is Doug Doe.
Are you aware that the city is accepting residential waste at that drop-off facility too?
Yes.
Does the city have a permit to accept residential waste at that facility?
I don't know. We're in an emergency right now. So.
Not talking about the emergency.
I'm not aware of us doing that before the emergency.
Not
During the emergency, when we got so far behind on picking up trash, we said, bring what you got. It will help us out.
So you weren't aware in July when the drop-off site was opened, Mayor Zahn and Sidney Torres did a video where they stand up in front of a sign saying this is what we're going to accept as waste at the drop-off facility, and it included residential waste.
I don't remember that, but I'm going to have to take your word for it.
Okay. All right. Let me see. I think I'm pretty close to being done. Let's take a break, talk to my clients.
Off the record, the time is now 3:20. Back on the record, the time is now 3:41.
All right, Ms. Foshee, that's all the questions I have. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the conclusion of the videotape deposition. Off the record, the time is 3:41.